Chapter 61. Nangongzhe had stayed in the country of hot water for nearly 3 days. Almost every day, he took Mashiro and Ling to play. He didn't know if Mashiro had forgotten that his purpose of coming out was to paint. The hot springs in the country of hot water had some special features. But no matter how special things were, he would lose interest if he saw them every day. Therefore, Nangongzhe was actually prepared to tell Mashiro and Ling. After packing up some of his belongings, he could leave here. But it turned out that plans were always disrupted. On this day, Nangongzhe carried his black sword and came back from his morning exercise outside. It was still early, around 5 o'clock in the morning. When Nangongzhe walked to the door of the hotel he was staying in, he found a team of shinobi standing at the door of the hotel he was staying in, as if they were waiting for someone. The leader of the shinobi seemed to be looking around, and after seeing Nangongzhe, he quickly ran over. Jonin-sama. The leader of the shinobi didn't seem to tell his subordinates about Nangongzhe's identity. The leader of the shinobi just thought that Nangongzhe was an ordinary wood-leaf jonin. Although the etiquette was thorough, the respect was obviously not enough. "Is it your leader, Kanzuya-sama, who asked you to find me?" Nangongzhe asked knowingly. After all, in such a country, the only person who could command an entire team of shinobi was Kanzuya, the leader of the shinobi in name. "Yes, Kanzuya-sama has something important to discuss with you. He wants to invite you to the office of the shinobi." This shinobi was very different from ordinary shinobi and shinobi villagers. Because most of the villagers and shinobi didn't have a good impression of Kanzuya, who had no strength, but a shrewd businessman. However, when this person mentioned Kanzuya's name, the light in his eyes was very bright for a moment. It was like every wood-leaf resident was the same when they mentioned Naruto. It was a kind of existence that formed a pillar in the soul. It seems that this ninja is Watanabe's confidant. Although they had only interacted for a short time, and Nangongzhe hadn't fought with this ninja yet. But judging from his casual performance, this person's strength is at least at the jonin level. "How should I address you?" Nangongzhe asked the ninja. "Just call me Water Luster." Tang Ren's leader, Water Luster, was obviously not a person who was good at chatting. Finally, Nangongzhe opened his mouth, but he abruptly cut off the entire topic. Coincidentally, Nangongzhe was not a talkative person. Therefore, the scene where the two of them interacted with each other was so cold that it felt like it was going to snow in June. Finally, the two of them remained silent for a while. Nangongzhe was the first to break the silence. "Please lead the way and come with me to meet Lord Hai." Water Luster nodded and moved towards Nangongzhe. He wanted to show that he was leading the way for Nangongzhe. And the ninjas who came with him began to have some thoughts in their hearts. Could it be that all the powerful people were like this? After all, Nangongzhe and Water Luster's ability to deal with people was really unbearable. Just like Nangongzhe, when he talked to leader Kanzuya, he was unexpectedly low-key. And now, when he talked to Water Luster, it was very awkward. It was not like a person with a normal EQ would do something like this. Ignoring the strange eyes of the Tang Ren around them, Nangongzhe and Water Luster soon arrived at leader Kanzuya's office. Kanzuya was sitting behind a huge desk, and a very extravagant pure gold Tang Ren symbol was hanging behind Kanzuya's back. The posture of a nouveau riche. "Why did Lord Kanzuya ask me to come here?" Nangongzhe pulled a chair opposite to Kanzuya and sat down. "Do you want to ask me more about Haiden?" Considering that Kanzuya was absent-minded last time, Nangongzhe thought that Kanzuya wanted to communicate with him about Haiden. But Kanzuya, who was sitting behind the desk, shook his head. "Actually, I have already ordered about Haiden. The whole ninja world has also started to prepare for Haiden's arrest. I can't do anything more. After all, Tang Ren doesn't have a huge umbu department like the great ninja village." Hearing Kanzuya's explanation, Nangongzhe couldn't say anything more. But Nangongja still felt that Kanzuya didn't seem to care about such a crazy ninja in his ninja village. In fact, this time, I invited Nangong Jonan to come here to ask Nangong Jonan to go to the Woodleaf with our congratulatory team. Congratulatory team? Nangongja was a bit strange. I don't know who the congratulatory team is. Seeing the doubts in Nangongja's heart, Kanzuya immediately began to explain. It's like this. Our Tangren and Woodleaf village have been ninja villages for generations. So when Woodleaf village has a happy event, our Tangren will send a congratulatory team to congratulate them. For example, when the Hokage ascends to the throne, our Tangren will send a team to Woodleaf village to cooperate with the Woodleaf village. This time, the fourth Hokage ascends to the throne. Because the war just ended, Tangren also had a lot of problems in the war. In order to solve the internal problems, Tangren didn't send anyone to attend the ceremony. These days, I heard that the fourth Hokage and his wife's child is about to be born. We wanted to send a team of ninja to congratulate them, and at the same time, to express our apology for not attending the ceremony. However, in these days, Nangong Jounan, you must have heard a lot of Tangren's internal evaluation of me. Many people obey my orders on the surface, but in private, they obey in public but oppose in private. Saying that, Kanzuya's face couldn't help but show a lot of bitterness. Mizusawa and I grew up together. He knows my dreams very well. That's why he's always been supporting me. But except for him, I can hardly mobilize the high-level power of Tangren. Because Mizusawa wants to protect my safety, I really can't find anyone to protect this congratulatory team. So, I can only ask you to protect this team to Woodleaf village. The embarrassment and entanglement in Kanzuya's eyes were obvious, and the reason Kanzuya gave to Nangongja was not a big problem. Nangongja thought, since I have decided to face the truth, then it's time to go back. Kanzuya-sama. Since you have already said it to this point, I have no reason to refuse. Presumably, Kanzuya-sama also knows that the two girls with me are the employers of the task I am currently carrying out. I need to go back and ask for their opinion. Nangongja didn't rush. After all, he was not alone. Of course. Kanzuya also nodded. Kanzuya stood up and personally sent Nangongja out of the office building. Looking at Nangongja's figure walking away, he didn't say a word. Finally, he sighed and turned to enter the office building. The tall office building looked like a huge fortress at this moment. Isolated from the outside world. Chapter 62. Nangongja naturally didn't see Kanzuya's performance. Of course, even if he saw it, he wouldn't care too much. Returning to the hotel, Nangongja saw Linger and Mashiro playing chess in the living room. Speaking of which, there is a need to explain. After coming to the land of hot water, Mashiro and Linger stayed in a good hotel. After Nangongja and Kanzuya met, several of Kanzuya's subordinates took Nangongja to this luxurious villa-like hotel. Nangongja, Mashiro, and Linger all had their own separate rooms. Kitchen, living room, and so on, everything was available. Naturally, there was also the most famous hot spring in the land of hot water. In the center of the house, there was a hot spring. It was surrounded by smoke all day long, but it looked very good. Seeing Nangongja enter the door, Mashiro didn't pay attention to him. Instead, she frowned and looked at the chessboard. Mashiro and Linger were playing a chess game that Nangongja learned from his sister. It's called Go. It seems to have a long history, but for various reasons, it's almost impossible to see it in the ninja world. Mashiro. Let's stop for a moment, I have something to discuss with you. Nangongja patted Mashiro's shoulder slightly, indicating that he wanted to talk to her. But Mashiro seemed to be completely immersed in the game, and she slapped Nangongja's hand away. Don't bother me, little Linger, I don't know why. She's so good at chess, but I obviously learned this game longer than her. How can I lose so miserably? Mashiro's strong logic instantly made Nangongja and Linger very embarrassed. Sister, brother seems to be looking for you for a very important matter. Let's stop for a while, I'm a little tired. Go drink some water. Ling said very sensibly. After all, although Nangongja's face wasn't ugly, it wasn't very good either. It felt like he had a lot on his mind. No way. If he had something to do, he would talk about it later. In any case, it wouldn't delay anything. Go. Playing chess is the most important thing. Alright, Mashiro was starting to pester endlessly. At this time, Nangongja and Linger had no choice but to continue playing chess with Mashiro. Under Linger's repeated throwing of the game, the two finally ended in a draw. But after calculating the numbers, Linger still had the advantage. Zhen Ashen's face turned a little sour. Then, Nangongja let Linger play by herself for a while. She pulled Mashiro into the study room. Alright, Xiao Ling isn't here anymore. If you have something to say, just say it. She shook off Nangongja's hand and sat on a bamboo chair in the study room. Well, when I came back this morning, I was called by the leader of the shinobi, you know about it, right? Mashiro nodded, indicating that he knew. Because when Nangongja left, he specifically left a person behind to inform Mashiro and Linger of his whereabouts. The shinobi leader called me to escort a team of shinobi to Woodleaf Village. To congratulate the fourth Hokage, Watergate-sama, on the birth of his child. Nangongja also found a place to sit down and slowly said. So, we're going back to Woodleaf Village soon? Mashiro asked, but his brows slightly wrinkled. I didn't immediately agree, because after all, I'm still responsible for escorting you around to collect information. And it's very troublesome to bring Linger to Woodleaf Village. Linger has been living with a Wang in that remote mountain village. She doesn't even have an ID. When Mashiro heard Nangongja's words, his brows relaxed. A girl's mind is always delicate. Seeing Nangongja asking for his opinion, his mood was a lot better. Linger's ID, I can think of a way. It'll be done soon. As a person who can hire a jonin to perform a long-term mission, his social power and wealth can be imagined. So for Mashiro to be able to solve such a problem, Nangongja didn't feel much surprise. There's one more thing, it's about my sister. Nangongja slightly lowered his head, so that Mashiro couldn't see his face. Sister? It's been so long. I don't seem to have heard you mention your sister. Indeed, Nangongja and Mashiro have been together for nearly 4 or 5 months. But Nangongja didn't mention that he had a sister. Naturally, Mashiro was sensitive enough to sense that something wasn't quite right. You and your sister? Mashiro didn't say much, but the doubt in his eyes was obvious. Well, as you think. There are a lot of things, but don't worry. I'll solve it. It's been so long, there's no point in dragging it out. Nangongja's attitude was very firm. Nangongja hoped that he could use this opportunity to clear all the disputes between himself and his sister. Since you've decided, then go. When I first came to Woodleaf Village, I only stayed in the outer residential area. Since I'm going with you this time, it's not a bad idea to let you take me to a place further inside. I don't know how it feels to see Woodleaf's famous Shadow Rock up close. Mashiro said and stood up. He opened the door and went to find Ling Er. Nangongja was left alone in the study room, thinking without saying a word. His own life, his own memories. All kinds of doubts, this time at Woodleaf Village must be cleared up. But Nangongja never thought that pursuing the truth was indeed a good thing. However, if he were to dig too much into the truth, would he end up being hurt by the sharp blade of the truth? But when people were young, they couldn't help but pursue the truth. Was it ignorance, or fearlessness? The next day, Nangongja went to Kanzuya's office early in the morning. He told Kanzuya that he could bring Tang Ren's congratulatory team to Woodleaf Village. Kanzuya was extremely grateful and bombarded with all kinds of attentiveness. Nangongja left Tang Ren's office. After that, Nangongja stayed in the hotel. Until Tang Ren's people came to inform Nangongja to leave for Woodleaf, Nangongja was almost silent in the hotel. Originally, Ling Er wanted to ask Nangongja what was going on. But she was pulled back by Mashiro. Because, at this moment, Nangongja was no longer someone who could be helped by simple persuasion. This knot in his heart had to be untied slowly. No matter how much anyone said, it wouldn't have much effect. Nangongja was also very clear that this matter had almost become a huge obstacle in his progress. Chapter 63. The huge convoy has been moving slowly along the wide road. With billowing smoke and a somewhat restless heart, the convoy moved forward under the slightly scorching sun. In fact, Tang Shinobu doesn't know when Yandame's child will be born. After all, whether it's Namikaze Watergate or Uzumaki Shinakushina, their identities are extremely special. The specific situation of the descendants' arrival is naturally strictly guarded. Tang Shinobu only decided to go to Woodleaf through his own various channels, coupled with the influence of rumors from Woodleaf. After all, Woodleaf is such a big village for a small country like Tang Shinobu. The pressure is too great. Even if Woodleaf reveals a little bit of dissatisfaction, it will make Tang Shinobu fearful. This is the sorrow of the weak in troubled times. Nangongja was facing a somewhat hot evening wind. The weather was a bit strange. Because it's already late autumn, but the weather is inexplicably hot. It seems that even the heavens are foretelling something. Woodleaf. It's been half a year since I went back. I don't know how Roro is doing in the village. Should I not be so obsessed with the fragments in my memory? Nangongja was lying on the roof of the carriage, with a dry grass in his mouth, thinking in his heart, but I really want to know what happened. Yes, Nangongja is still tangled in how to face Nangong-ro. Over the years, Nangongja and Nangong-ro's relationship is not just a simple brother and sister relationship. Instead, it's closer, and they almost became the pillar of life between each other. Nangong-ro doesn't like to deal with people. Nangongja is a bit eccentric. It's because of these two people that they can no longer be separated from each other. Nangongja sat up and looked around. It seems that we have entered the territory of the Land of Fire. Woodleaf Village. It's not far away. The whole convoy drove for half a day, and at this moment, they were very close to Woodleaf Village. Nangongja was a little anxious, and he actually got rid of the convoy and jumped over the canopy again and again. Originally, Nangongja should see the peaceful scenery of Woodleaf Village. It's the mighty Shadow Rock. But at this moment, Nangongja didn't see these things. Instead, a huge red nine-tails fox raging in Woodleaf Village. Flames were burning everywhere, and wails spread all over the village. As far as the eye could see, there were only broken walls and ruins. There were also many corpses. Nangongja instantly felt a little flustered in his heart. How can Nai, a ninja who specializes in medical ninjutsu, protect herself? Suddenly, Nangongja's heart was burning with anxiety. Li Yang. Nangongja summoned Li Yang. The shrunken Li Yang looked around and wanted to ask something, but she was interrupted by Nangongja's voice. The village was attacked, and I'm worried about Ro's safety. You go and inform the convoy to stop moving. I'll go find Ro and protect her safety. Nangongja quickly said. As soon as his voice fell, Li Yang couldn't see Nangongja's figure. Li Yang also knew that the situation was critical, so she didn't show her usual nagging nature, but quickly ran in the direction of the convoy. Not to mention the various matters after Li Yang arrived at the convoy. Nangongja anxiously ran to the place where he and Nangong-ro lived, only to find a broken wall. Even the fire on the wooden structure of the house had been extinguished. This was enough to prove that the house had been destroyed for a long time. However, after Nangongzhi used a small amount of internal strength in his body to strengthen his 5 senses, he found that Nangong couldn't be in the ashes. So he immediately looked around. Finally, near 9 Tails, Nangongzhi found Nangong. Nangong was currently bandaging the wound of an injured ninja. Ro. Nangongzhi couldn't help but call out. Hearing the familiar voice, Nangong also turned around and saw Nangongzhi. Brother, in an instant, Nangongzhi almost used his fastest speed to rush to Nangong's side. He hugged Nangong. I just went to take a look at our house, and found that it was all in ruins. I was so worried about you at that time. Fortunately, I found you so quickly. Nangongzhi hugged Nangong tightly, as if this was the only way to express his feelings. I don't want to think about anything now. I just want you to live a safe and sound life. Nangong felt Nangongzhi's words at this moment. Suddenly, she felt a little complicated. Nangong shouldn't have been able to understand the reason why Nangongzhi stayed away from Woodleaf at that time. However, it had been so long. From Nangongzhi's various abnormal behaviors at that time, she could guess most of it. Okay, Nangong buried her head in Nangongzhi's broad shoulders, suddenly feeling that this was the only place that made her feel most at ease. If Nangongzhi really found out the truth, it was actually not all a bad thing. Because, as long as that was the case, she and Nangongzhi could, no, how could she think of such shameless things? Be careful! Nangongzhi suddenly roared. He pushed Nangong, who was in his arms, to the side. He didn't even have time to pull out the black sword on his back, and could only rely on the gauntlet on his arm to protect himself. That's right, 9 Tails, who was wreaking havoc in the surroundings, suddenly became more violent at this moment. It wasn't just the 4 sharp claws that were constantly destroying the surrounding environment. 9 Tails also carried a huge force as it swept around in all directions. Furthermore, an even bigger chakra bomb was condensing in 9 Tails' huge mouth. Even Nangongzhi couldn't resist the huge force. He could only be thrown to the ground heavily, splashing a huge amount of dust. What was more dangerous was that Nangongzhi's precarious balance between the inner energy and the sword energy in his body had already collapsed at this moment. The sword energy was wreaking havoc in his body, and the inner energy was constantly exerting its power to repair Nangongzhi's body. Nangong quickly ran over and looked at Nangongzhi's bulging veins. She frowned immediately. Possessed? At this moment, Nangong vaguely understood Nangongzhi's current situation. In order to calm Nangongzhi's sword energy, she quickly took out a crystal that was emitting a blue light from a small pouch that she carried with her. This is the life-saving item that grandfather left behind. I thought that it would take a long time for brother to cultivate to this stage, but I didn't expect it to be so fast. At this moment, Nangong's eyes didn't show the joy of solving the problem. Instead, there was an unusual seriousness in her eyes. Chapter 64. Looking at Nangongzhi's frowning brows, Nangong could almost feel his pain. His entire body was being destroyed by the power that he had cultivated bit by bit. He felt his tendons, bones, and flesh being eroded bit by bit. Even the legendary 100 poisons devouring the body couldn't be compared to this, right? However, once this crystal was used, the consequences might be even more serious. Being possessed by the devil was actually the sword energy going berserk. As long as he was willing to give up his cultivation, seal his meridians, and use secret medicine, he could still save his life. However, the price to pay for this was the loss of his cultivation, and he would become a cripple. He couldn't even walk, sit, or lie down. Brother, after so many years, I think I understand you. If I ask you to live the rest of your life like a cripple, you definitely won't be willing. Nangong's small hand clenched the crystal even more tightly. If I were to choose, would want you to live. But if I were to choose for you, I would want you to die for yourself. Nangong Ro raised the crystal high. Brother. You've been working hard for me these past few years, doing a lot of things you didn't want to do. You've killed a lot of people you didn't want to kill. In the future, don't do this again. Live for your own sake. The sparkling light turned into streams of light, twining around Nangong Ro. The streams of light slowly converged into the crystal held high by Nangong Ro, and the blue light shone even more brightly. Grandfather. You wanted brother to recover so that he could protect me. So, you secretly left a seed in the internal energy you transferred to brother. Once brother tried to reverse the internal energy, the seed would be activated. It would quickly convert all the internal energy from you into sword energy. However, grandfather, you never thought that brother would become brother. He became a member of Woodleaf. All kinds of dangerous situations and brother's hard work made the internal energy in brother's body exceed the internal energy you transferred to him. So, the sword energy didn't have a complete advantage in the battle in the body. This crystal is the control device of the sword energy seed. At the same time, it's also the central device that mediates the internal energy and sword energy. I will now use my life energy to activate it. I hope that I can bring Oni-san a glimmer of hope to continue to roam the ninja world with a sword. The light of the crystal finally reached its peak. Brother. Wake up again. Nangong Ro pressed the crystal between Nangong's eyebrows. The seemingly sturdy crystal shattered in an instant. Instantly, it turned into a blue mist and enveloped Nangong's body. Bit by bit, the light mist merged into every inch of Nangong's body. At this moment, the violent sword aura and the weak inner strength had calmed down. Nangong's sword chi was slowly extracted, and the painful expression on his face gradually eased. Countless strands of sword chi that had been drawn out were wandering around Nangong's. But for a moment, it turned into a sword energy dragon. Stroking Nangong's body, it floated in the air. The sword energy dragon was getting bigger and bigger, thicker and thicker. It even slowly became as thick as Nine Tails' tail. Countless people's eyes began to focus on Nangong's place. Who is that person? At this moment, Yondaime Hokage Watergate also noticed the special scene behind Nine Tails. Originally, Watergate had consumed a lot of energy to resist Nine Tails' Bijadama and the Masked Man's attack. But in order to stop Nine Tails' rampage, Watergate could only fight with Nine Tails. The hand seal in his hand was half-formed, but he put it down. Even ants drag out their lives, let alone Watergate. He had a wife who loved him, and a newborn child. Even if Shina Kushina was the Nine Tails' column force, at this moment, her life was in danger. But as long as Watergate was willing, there were still many ways to extend Shina Kushina's life. At this moment, the sword energy dragon outside Nangong's body gave Watergate a glimmer of hope to live with his family. Something's not right. The sword energy dragon has been hovering in the sky for a long time, but it never attacked Nine Tails' demon fox. It just hovered on its own. And Nangong's? He was still unconscious. Because at this moment, Nangong's was paying attention to the changes in his body. Originally, the sword energy had destroyed the tendons and flesh in his body. His internal energy had also started to weaken, and many damaged parts had not been repaired in time. But suddenly, a strange blue energy entered Nangong's body. The sword energy that enveloped his body was slowly extracted. But not all of the sword energy was extracted. Instead, there was a considerable amount of sword energy left in his body. The internal energy that had been suppressed to the point of death was now like a hungry tiger, instantly wrapping around the remaining sword energy. Slowly, the sword energy was eaten away and digested. And the internal energy also started to have some characteristics of the sword energy. Showing off his ability. The black sword that had fallen to the ground when he was slapped away. Now, under the dual guidance of the internal energy and the sword energy, it was suspended in the air. It was waiting for its master to hold it again and conquer the world. Roar! Nangong's eyes suddenly opened, and he let out a long howl. Along with the sword's clanging sound, it was like a dragon's roar resounding through the sky. Subconsciously, Nangongja reached out his hand. The black sword seemed to have a mind of its own, and it landed in Nangongja's hand. At this moment, Nangongja's consciousness was still fuzzy. He was just following his instincts and calling for his parts. The huge body of 9 tails was now a target in Nangongja's eyes. Slash! Nangongja did not roar, nor did he have any emotional fluctuations. He just waved the black sword gently, and the sword energy dragon rushed toward 9 tails under the guidance of his internal energy. The sword energy dragon, as the name suggested, was made up of sword energy that specialized in killing. Therefore, one could imagine its power. Just as the sword energy dragon was about to hit 9 tails' body, it began to disintegrate. It was not that the sword energy dragon did not have enough power and dissipated on its own. But this was the only way to display the strongest power of the sword energy. Countless sword energy twined around 9 tails' body. No one knew how much of 9 tails' fiery red hair was cut off. There were even many small wounds on 9 tails' body. The 9-tailed beast had a strong recovery ability. But at this moment, the speed of recovery was far slower than the speed of injury. Wounds covered 9 tails' body. Chapter 65. Sword ki is a killing technique, so it naturally has an advantage when attacking. At this moment, the sword ki dragon has fully proved this point. After all, even the tailed beast, one of the 9 great weapons of the shinobi world, has suffered a lot of losses under the sword ki. However, the effect caused by the sword ki dragon was only temporary. These sword ki were forcibly extracted from Nangongja's body by the smoke formed by the blue crystal. Although Nangongja can use the sword ki dragon to attack 9 tails to a certain extent by absorbing some of the sword ki characteristics of the Nangongja. But all of this is still a rootless tree, a water without a source. It can be a hero for a while, but it won't last long. After a while, the sword ki that was originally wrapped around 9 tails' body has become thin. Roar! 9 tails roared, and his limbs suddenly exerted force. All the chakra contained in his body burst out in an instant, and the powerful chakra formed a huge wind. You despicable humans! You dare to control me, dare to hurt me. After that bastard Madara, who dares to do this? 9 tails' roar resounded over the entire shinobi village. I want you to die. 9 tails' momentary venting seemed to have given the wood leaf the key to the truth. Control? The Kyuubi was actually manipulated by someone to attack Konoha? Thinking about it, 9 tails was defeated by the woodleaf's first Hokage, Senju Takuma. Even 9 tails' column force was the wife of the first Hokage. Although the Uzumaki family's seal is very powerful, they still have some knowledge of the outside world. Konoha continued to produce many talented ninjas, and many secret jutsu and forbidden tomes were researched and developed by them. When fighting against other shinobi villages, they simply beat all the other shinobi villages with their strength. You know, no matter how powerful the tailed beast is. In the end, they are still beasts, and they must follow the nature of beasts. How can they not know to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages? It seems that all of this is related to the masked man who claims to be Uchiha Madara. Watergate couldn't help but think of the strange masked ninja who released 9 tails and can use space ninjutsu. At this moment, Sandaime, who was leading Konoha's shinobi to rescue, also returned to Minato's side. Watergate. Thanks to Nangongja's sudden outburst, I've saved many villagers who couldn't save themselves. Hearing 3 generations of the tailed beast, ninja, Watergate nodded. Ninjas in the Woodleaf village, there's, ninjas Woodleaf of ninjas as well. Although they are not ninjas, a large number of them are elite craftsmen, nobles, or wealthy merchants. Such people choose to settle in Woodleaf to ensure their own safety or to issue important tasks. If they lose this important prerequisite, then Woodleaf will have a great loss in logistics and the number of tasks. This is a matter of face for Woodleaf, and it can't be lost for a Hokage. Therefore, Watergate is willing to take a great risk and let the 3 generations of the tailed beast, who has retired to the second line, rescue them. But I think Nangong's current outburst can't last long. The storm formed by the sword energy has begun to disintegrate, and we need to find a way to deal with it. As Shui Men spoke, there was a trace of determination in his eyes. Obviously, he has made up his mind. You mean? Corpse Demon Seal. Sandaime suddenly remembered that Minato had been studying an ancient sacrificial seal from the Uzumaki clan, which was similar to that of a sacrificial seal. Watergate nodded, and even his hands began to print. Sandaime looked at Watergate with complicated eyes. Watergate can be said to be the most qualified ninja Sandaime has ever seen in his life. He is not blinded by the killing of ninjas all day long, and he keeps his heart unchanged. He is willing to open his heart to everyone, let himself turn into a flame to warm others and illuminate others. But at the same time, he will not be affected by his own emotions. When it comes to making a choice, he will not be impulsive and will always look at the overall situation. However, is he really going to watch such a young and energetic person fall in front of him? No. He is already old, and there are few things he can do. Although he can help Watergate suppress a lot of the older generation so that they can't cause any trouble. But for Watergate, isn't it just a little trouble? Watergate. Don't be impulsive. Sandaime stepped forward, trying to stop Watergate. Your child has just been born, and Shina Kushina is also in an extremely dangerous situation. You give up your life like this, isn't it unfair to your child? Isn't it unfair to Shina Kushina? Yes, you are a ninja. But before that, you are still a person, a father. You are living up to your responsibilities as a ninja, but what about other responsibilities? The Sandaime has been the Hokage for so long, and he has seen too much of Konoha's secrets and dark secrets that are hard to look at directly. The 3 generations of the tailed beast also forced his best disciple, Orochimaru, to leave. Studying ninjutsu involves a lot of problems with the human body, so how can it be done without human anatomy? Although on the surface, the major ninja villages resist this kind of behavior. But who dares to say that they haven't done it in private? A ninja is only valuable if he is alive. Dead? Isn't that just a corpse? 3 generations, Sama, I know. I know everything you said. But Watergate turned his head and looked at the 3 generations. His eyes were even full of tears. I have been a ninja for so long, I have gradually forgotten what a person should be like. Yes, this is the kind of person who grew up in a ninja village, a place where military power is concentrated. No matter how strong their self-regulation ability is, there are always flaws. Even Watergate is no exception. Child. Then learn slowly, just like you are learning a very rare ninjutsu. Nothing is born with knowledge, everything is learned little by little. You have no parents since you were a child, and you must be worried about whether you will be a qualified father. In fact, there was no need for Minato to use such a powerful sealing technique as the Corpse Demon Seal. Because Kyuubi had just left the body of the Jinchuriki, and a large part of his power had not yet recovered, he was already controlled. Unable to recover his chakra to the maximum efficiency, he finally regained his consciousness. But because of Nangong's sword Chi Dragon, Kyuubi got rid of Nangong's control. After that, he suffered a lot of injuries under the sword Chi storm. In order to get rid of the last bit of sword Chi, he stimulated the remaining chakra in anger. Now 9 Tails can be said to be at the bottom of his strength. The opportunity to win has appeared. Chapter 66. Just when Sandame wanted to say something to Watergate, Nine-Tails' eyes turned into 3 tomo again. Kyubi was being manipulated once again. Its huge mouth opened again, and a new Bijidama was ready to be released. However, it was obvious that Nine-Tails wasn't in the right state at this moment. The Bijidama was different from the previous dazzling light, it was flickering. It was obvious that although the chakra in Nine-Tails' body was huge, it had also fallen into a trough. It was obvious that the person who manipulated Nine-Tails was anxious. The sudden burst of sword chi disrupted the masked man's plan. In a hidden forest. At this moment, the masked man was standing on top of a tall tree. Wood leaf on fire was reflected in the masked man's only exposed eye. A constantly rotating 3 tomo Sharingan also revealed the masked man's somewhat anxious heart. It seems that, your plan isn't going very well. A joking voice sounded behind the masked man, and at the same time, a huge pitcher plant rose from the ground. It was obvious that the words just now were said by Zetsu. Hearing Zetsu's words, the masked man didn't say anything. But his somewhat chaotic breathing clearly showed that the masked man's heart was not calm. I always thought that your plan was a bit rushed. Although Nine-Tails is very powerful. But it's a bit wishful thinking to want to destroy Wood Leaf with just 9 tails. Zetsu walked to the masked man's side and kept talking. Right now, it's just a little famous Nangongja's outbreak, then. If Sandame, who is known as the ninjutsu professor, who can single-handedly change the situation of the battle, goes all out, what kind of level will he be? Even if Sandame is not clear about how strong he is, you should be very clear about the power of the Yondame, right? That's it for this time. Anyway, it's not a big investment, but it's clear that Wood Leaf's strength is real, and it also caused a certain amount of damage. Not bad, just take it as a small lesson for Wood Leaf. The masked man snorted coldly, and the Magatama in his eyes stopped spinning. He turned around and walked into the deep and dark forest. This person is really impulsive. White Zoo looked at the masked man's back and couldn't help but say, "Isn't it good? You and I both know how little experience he has. If it really is that shrewd, you and I will have a lot of trouble controlling it." This was perfect. Our priority now is not to fight with him, but to determine who the next column force is. Black Zetsu heard White Zetsu's nagging, and he voiced his opinion. That's true. Right now, the most important thing for us is to pay attention to who column force is. White Zetsu obviously agreed with Black Zetsu. On the other hand, Nine-Tails, under the control of the masked man, went berserk again after releasing a Bijidama that wasn't perfectly charged. It was just that it instinctively started to destroy everything. And Nangongja? When Nine-Tails' sword chi dragon exploded, Nangongja fell from the sky. Nangong-ro was taking care of her at this moment. 4th generation head and Sandame seemed to have come to a conclusion after a short period of communication. Pass down the order for the whole barrier class to gather. Sandame waved his hand, showing the style of a ninja hero. Yes. A few of the bodyguards immediately knelt down and accepted the order. They scattered in an instant. 3 generations head. Then, let us first restrict Nine-Tails' movement. Weaken Nine-Tails' physical strength, and wait for the rest of the barrier class to gather. 4th generation head said, and his hands began to form seals. Summoning technique. Come out, Toad Wen-Tai. A huge cloud of smoke rose, and Toad Wen-Tai's figure appeared. Watergate boy. This. It's actually Nine-Tails. Wen-Tai stretched out his claws, and pointed at the similarly huge creature in front of him. But, the situation doesn't seem right? Has he lost his mind? And his strength doesn't seem to be as strong as the rumors say. Watergate nodded, indicating that Wen-Tai was right. Previously, Nine-Tails was controlled by someone, and used up too much of his chakra. Moreover, Nangongja in our village suddenly exploded, and caused a huge loss to Nine Tails. Nine Tails was controlled time and time again, and now his mind is in a mess. Watergate jumped up, and stood on top of Wen Tai's head. Let's block him for a while, and then we'll work together with the entire barrier class to seal Nine Tails. Ha ha ha. Fighting with the legendary nine-tailed beast really makes me excited. Wen Tai roared, pulled out his short sword from his back, and began to fight with Nine Tails. Minato also cooperated with Wen Tai's attack and began to use Flying Thunder God Jutsu again and again, and then used Rasengan to cause damage to Kyubi. Looking at Watergate's performance at this moment, Sandaime suddenly began to feel a little excited, and he remembered how he felt when he was on the battlefield. Ha ha ha. Then I can't let Watergate monopolize the limelight. These old bones of mine can still give it a try. The third king's hands began to form hand seals. Spirit communication technique. Ape demon. A huge ape appeared in the smoke. Yuan Fei, you haven't called me out for a long time. The ape demon was obviously a cheerful person, and when he saw Sandaime, he immediately greeted him happily. It's been a while, after all, I've retired. There are fewer battles, but today you and I still need to fight side by side, let's go all out. Yuan Fei said, pointing his finger at Nine Tails, who was fighting with Watergate. I didn't expect that there would be a day when I would fight with Nine Tails. But Watergate boy is really powerful now. You have chosen a good successor. Sandaime stretched out his hand, and the ape demon immediately understood the meaning of 3 generations. It turned into a huge weapon called Golden Staff. Don't think so much, this time I can finally have a good fight. Every ninja has a warlike gene flowing in their body. It may not be obvious at ordinary times, but once it's time to fight, everyone will be very excited. Just like 3 generations, he is usually like an amiable grandfather. But once the fight starts, his whole spirit condenses into one. It's like a humanoid weapon born for war. Ha ha ha. With a roar, the Jingu Bang in his hand changed according to his will, becoming bigger and longer. It smashed towards Nine Tails with a large front and a small back. The huge force even caused Kyubi to stagger. There were even traces of blood seeping out from the places where the Jingu Bang had struck. The fighting power of 3 generations is so fierce. Chapter 67. 3 generations and 4 generations were fighting fiercely against Nine Tails, and the fierce battle also inspired the confidence of many Woodleaf ninjas. Suddenly, the Woodleaf ninjas were fighting back and forth with Nine Tails. Victory seemed to be not far away. However, Yondaime-sama and Sandaime-sama are also very clear in their hearts that this is just a temporary situation. The moves they used were all ninjutsu. So, they could suppress Nine Tails for a while. But it was wishful thinking to defeat Nine Tails. For this almost immortal tailed beast, the best solution was still to seal him. Reporting to Hokage-sama. The sealing team is in place. A ninja suddenly appeared behind Watergate and reported to Watergate on one knee. Very good, 3 generations and I will now try our best to restrict Nine Tails' activities. The ninjutsu team will suppress Nine Tails from a distance, and the sealing team will find an opportunity to seal Nine Tails. Watergate said, but he seemed to have a plan in mind. He waved his hand. He called the ninja kneeling next to him and whispered something in his ear. The ninja's expression changed, but he still bowed his head. He disappeared in a flash. 3 generations also came to 4 generations' side at this moment. What should I do now? After all, 3 generations had already abdicated, and they had to lower their attitude in front of Watergate. This was the basic respect for the position of Hokage. 3 generations, Sama, you and I will try our best to restrict Nine Tails' movements. 3 generations nodded, indicating that they understood. But after thinking about it, they opened their mouth and asked their doubts. Who are you going to seal Nine Tails on? Column forces requirements are very strict. Your apprentice Rin was forced to seal 9 tails because she didn't meet column forces requirements. In the end, Kakashi. The 3 generations did not continue, but the meaning behind their words was clear. To become a human column force, one's body, chakra, and other aspects were very demanding. It required a long selection process, and it was best to officially become a human column force at a young age. Only in this way could he adapt to the tailed beast's chakra to the greatest extent and display the advantage of the human column force. 3 generations, please don't worry. I already have a plan for this matter. The candidate for the next Jinchuriki will be here soon. Watergate waved his hand, looking very calm. 3 generations didn't say anything when they saw how confident Watergate was. Then. Ninjutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. The 3 generations had a total of 20 doppelgangers. After seeing the 3 generations' actions, Watergate also understood the 3 generations' intentions. Good. Then I will also. Ninjutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Watergate also had 20 shadow clones. Each of Watergate's doppelgangers stood beside the 3 generations' doppelgangers and grabbed the shoulders of the 3 generations' doppelgangers. One-hand seal. Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Watergate's signature ninjutsu was instantly released, and 3 generations' doppelgangers appeared in all directions of 9 tails. But how did the Flying Thunder God's mark spread around 9 tails? Watergate had been fighting with 9 tails for a long time before. The special Flying Thunder God's kunai were also scattered around the battlefield. At this moment, it was not a problem to take 3 generations' doppelgangers everywhere. Watergate and 3 generations' doppelgangers nodded to each other and began to stand on both sides of 9 tails' huge head. Bind! A loud shout came from the Watergate and reverberated throughout the battlefield. A special steel wire was shot out from the hands of 3 generations and Watergate and into the hands of the doppelgangers on the opposite side. Chakra was constantly wandering in the steel wire, activating the runes engraved on the steel wire. No matter what attribute the chakra was, it began to transform into lightning chakra with paralysis attribute at this moment. Although 9 Tails' body was made of chakra, it still had flesh and blood. It would bleed and hurt. Naturally, it would also feel a sense of paralysis. The steel wire wrapped around 9 Tails' body, as well as the constant lightning chakra, consumed 9 Tails' stamina. For a moment, 9 Tails' limbs went soft. He almost fell to the ground. Now! The 4th and 3 generations shouted at the same time. The sealing class finished their preparations and instantly opened the huge scrolls on their backs. One by one, the scrolls extended to a length that obviously did not match the width of the scroll. Following the guidance of the steel wire, it began to spread to 9 Tails' body. The ninjas who were still using ninjutsu to suppress 9 Tails' movement also stopped releasing ninjutsu. Instead, they spread out and stood behind the sealing class ninjas. Using their hands to transfer chakra to the sealing class ninjas was a huge consumption. The text on the scroll wrapped around 9 Tails' body seemed to come alive under a large amount of chakra. It kept wandering around the area covered by the scroll. The text seemed to have a faint light. It showed how powerful the sealing technique was. 9 Tails' body seemed to be shrinking visibly. Very good. 3 generations, Sama, let's also do our best. Seeing that the situation was good, the 4th said to the 3 generations. The 3 generations is known as the ninjutsu professor, and Watergate's wife, Uzumaki Shinakushina, is the successor of the famous Uzumaki clan's sealing technique. Both of them have a certain understanding of sealing technique. Coupled with the huge chakra of the 2 Kage level. In an instant, the sealing speed of the sealing technique increased rapidly. In less than half an hour, 9 Tails was compressed into a ball by the sealing technique. At this moment, the ninja who Watergate just whispered to also came to Watergate's side with a baby in his arms. The three generations used their eyesight to see the conspicuous golden hair in an instant. Watergate. That's your child who was born not long ago. You want to use him as the column force of Nine Tails? The three generations were shocked for a moment. The most suitable physique to seal Nine Tails was originally the physique of the Uzumaki clan. And the Uzumaki clan is now in decline, and their descendants are drifting in the ninja world. It was a coincidence that we would were able to find Shinakushina. And because Shinakushina was forcibly separated from the Nine Tails, even with the tyrannical physique of the Uzumaki clan, her body can no longer withstand the resealing of Nine Tails. So, now the only one who can seal Nine Tails and become the column force is my child with Shinakushina. Watergate said slowly, but his tone was particularly firm. The sadness in his eyes can be seen even by others. Becoming the column force means abandoning the life of an ordinary person. Becoming a professional humanoid weapon. Even with the care of Watergate and the three generations. The child will not become a brainwashed killing machine. But it won't be much better. Becoming the column force is a huge responsibility and burden. He had personally pushed his child onto this path of no return. As a father, the sadness in his heart was self-evident. Chapter 68. My child with Shinakushina. Looking at his child in his arms, Watergate couldn't help but mutter to himself. Obviously, his eyes haven't opened yet, but Watergate felt that his child's eyes must be like the stars in the night sky, bright and shining. Dad, I've always been proud of being a ninja of Konoha. Even if I have encountered danger countless times, and violated my heart countless times. But I have never regretted being a ninja. He stretched out his hand and gently pulled the swaddling cloth that had slipped off. Today, I will once again go against my own heart because I am a ninja. I will send my child on a road that is destined to be full of ups and downs. But Dad believes that you will be strong enough to make a world for yourself. If there is a reason, then, it must be because you are the son of the fourth Hokage of Woodleaf, Watergate. You are a son of flame who has inherited the will of fire of Woodleaf. After Watergate finished this sentence, he turned his head. Looking at the ninjas in the enchantment class. Now. Start the Nine Tails sealing ceremony. A loud and clear voice instantly resounded through the sky. Every ninja in the enchantment class, as well as the ninja in the chakra class, was full of pride at this moment. This is the Nine Tails. The Nine Tails, the first of the nine-tailed beasts. Since the death of Konoha's first Hokage, no one has been able to suppress such a powerful existence. At this very moment, they were about to witness this historic moment. Even the calmest person was extremely agitated at this moment. Yes. 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 The excited shouts of many ninjas instantly drowned out the struggling screams of Nine Tails. Everyone was so excited. Because after this battle, the glory of defeating Nine Tails will accompany him for the rest of his life. But the louder the excited shouts around him, the more sad Yondame's heart was. Using his son's life in exchange for the stability of Woodleaf. As a father, how pitiful was that? Ninjutsu class. Follow my chakra's guidance and begin sealing Nine Tails. However, the fourth generation couldn't say anything. Instead, he was more excited than anyone else. At the very least, he has to pretend to be more excited than anyone else, because Hokage doesn't represent himself, but the entire Woodleaf ninja force. The desire of this group is the desire of Hokage. As long as they weren't mediocre people, they would be respected. They were all people who were forced by their responsibilities. Watergate increased the output of chakra and used his chakra as a marker. He guided the rest of the ninjas to seal Nine Tails. Since he had decided to let his son become column force, then, he naturally had to do his best to fulfill the best conditions. The seal used by Watergate was based on the inheritance of the Uzumaki clan and Watergate's design. It was a super sealing technique called the Four Symbols Seal. Using the power of the four symbols of heaven and earth to suppress everything. Slowly, Nine Tails, which was originally the size of a house, shrank even more at this moment. Just when Nine Tails was almost suppressed to the extreme, Watergate once again increased the output of chakra. Now, Nine Tails will turn from real to virtual and be sealed again. Hearing Watergate's words, many ninjas also desperately began to output their chakra. Child. Father will add an even more powerful weight to you. Biting the tip of his tongue, a sweet taste instantly spread in his mouth. Watergate used his tongue to carve a seal on his upper jaw. He opened his mouth, and a blood-colored streamer instantly penetrated the sphere formed by Nine Tails. This was a talisman that Watergate spent 10 years of his life to carve with his powerful chakra and deep understanding of sealing techniques. It was a gate that led to the depths of Nine Tails chakra. From then on, as long as Watergate's child can cultivate to the highest level. Even if Nine Tails doesn't release his chakra to support column force, Watergate's child can forcibly extract Nine Tails chakra. From then on, Nine Tails consciousness will become a clay bodhisattva, which can only be seen but useless. Watching the sphere slowly become transparent, as if it turned into a transparent fiery glass. Watergate waved his hand and guided Nine Tails into his child's body with chakra. Furthermore, it was sealed tightly. After doing all this, Watergate spat a mouthful of blood to the sky. He fell to the ground, weak. Master said that a child of prophecy will appear in this world. When the world is about to die, the child of shinobi will save the entire shinobi world. At one time, Master thought that I was the so-called child of prophecy. But it turns out that I'm not. Because all I can do is to protect the piece of wood leaf. I don't know who the real child of prophecy is. But he must be a member of the next generation of ninja. Master once wrote a novel. The name of the protagonist in the novel is Naruto. That's the ninja character I've always dreamed of. I hope that one day, my child can also become such a ninja. So, my child will be called Naruto from now on. After saying these words, Watergate fainted due to overexertion. Watergate. Watergate. Seeing Watergate fall to the ground, 3 generations lost their virginity for a moment. But then they began to shout Watergate's name, and turned their heads and shouted, "Medical class. Come here." After a long time, the medical class who dared to come checked Watergate's body. They said, reporting to 3 generations, "Sama, Hokage-sama's body is fine. It's just excessive consumption, and it seems that he used a secret technique, which consumed a lot of his lifespan. His body can't bear it, and he fainted under self-protection. As long as he takes good care of himself, he will naturally be fine." After listening to the report of the medical class, 3 generations instantly relaxed. But as if thinking of something, he asked, "Then, what's the situation with Shinakushina?" When the medical ninja leader heard this question, his face instantly became bitter. The situation is very bad. Originally, as a human, column force wouldn't be able to survive after his tailed beast was forcibly extracted. But Shinakushina, Sama relied on her strong vitality, and our medical class's full support. For the time being, we can only hold on to a glimmer of hope. If we want to recover, maybe. Hearing the medical ninja leader's hesitant answer, 3 generations felt a little irritated. "Say it. What do you need? I'll try my best. At all costs, we must save Shinakushina's life." After listening, the medical ninja's face didn't disappear. Medicine or something, for the current Shinakushina, Sama, it's not that useful. In the ninja world, there's only one person who can save Shinakushina, Sama. Although he didn't finish, the answer was already obvious. The key to saving Shinakushina is the Princess of Woodleaf, Tsunade Heim. Chapter 69. When he heard Tsunade's name, Sandame's face changed. Everyone said that Tsunade left the wood leaf because her loved ones died protecting the wood leaf. She left the wood leaf because she was heartbroken. But, as a veteran ninja who had experienced World War II and World War III, she was very strong. Was her psychological quality really that weak? You know, whether it was Seiya or her brother. After they died, although Tsunade also had a sad reaction and even suffered from sepsis because of psychological trauma. But everything was limited to that. Tsunade's departure, whether it was because of the wood leaf or because she had done too many sad things. The wood leaf was planted by Tsunade's grandfather Senja Takuma and protected by Tsunade's second grandfather Tobarama. Unknowingly, it had been eroded by worms. It was no longer the place where Tsunade grew up. That was the fundamental reason why Tsunade left the wood leaf. Since only Tsunade can save Shinakushina, then I'll think of a way. You just have to try your best to preserve Shinakushina's life until Tsunade comes back. The three generations' face was unusually heavy when they spoke. The medical ninja leader didn't dare to say anything. After all, Tsunade was his direct superior, and the three generations was Tsunade's master. He was just a medical ninja, so he couldn't say anything about it. After answering yes, the medical ninja leader disappeared with a body flicker technique. The Sandame heaved a heavy sigh and disappeared as well. When Nangongja opened his eyes again, he saw a strange white ceiling. His body was unbelievably heavy, as if it was filled with lead. He tried to make a sound, but he could only make a hoarse and low hiss. At this time, something seemed to move on his left. Nangongja turned his head and found Nangong Ro lying on the bed. Her clothes were a little dirty. Obviously, it was the clothes she wore when she fought Nine Tails. Maybe she heard Nangongja's low hiss. Nangong Ro raised her head and looked at Nangongja who was lying on the bed. She looked at Nangongja and seemed to want to say something. She noticed Nangongja's dry lips. Nangong Ro hurriedly stood up in a panic. Looking at Nangong Ro's figure leaving, Nangongja suddenly felt a burst of tiredness. Then, Nangongja fell into a deep sleep. He tried to open his eyes and make a sound. But vaguely, he felt a chill in his mouth, and then he didn't feel anything more. When Nangongja broke free from the darkness again and opened his eyes, Nangongja was shocked. He immediately used his greatest strength to turn his head, trying to see Nangong Ro's figure. However, the person that entered his eyes was not Nangong Ro. It was Mashiro who came back from Yuzakura with him. Seeing Nangongja looking at her, Mashiro immediately stood up in a panic and grabbed Nangongja's hand. "Miyagi, you're awake? Do you want to drink water?" Mashiro said and was about to let go of Nangongja's hand. She went to the bedside table and picked up the full water bottle. But Nangongja tried to hold Mashiro's hand and squeezed Mashiro's little hand. "Ro," a word came out of Nangongja's mouth. Mashiro quickly reacted. Nangongja was looking for his sister. "Are you looking for Nangong Ro?" Mashiro asked tentatively. Nangongja heard Mashiro's question and shook his head vigorously. Mashiro looked at Nangongja's struggling face and didn't want to turn around to get water. Instead, he sat on the edge of Nangongja's bed and stretched out his hand to stroke Nangongja's messy hair. "It's okay, Nangong Ro just went to work." When Nine Tails attacked the village, many people were injured. In order to take care of you, Nangong Ro stayed by your bed for a day and a night. When Ling, and I followed Kagakure's delegation to Woodleaf Village, Nangong Ro was already very tired. I told her that I knew you, so I discussed with her to take care of you. After listening to Mashiro's words, Nangongja let go of Mashiro's hand. "Are you relieved?" Mashiro suddenly smiled. "You're just like the sister complex I heard. You're so sad for your sister. Can't you pay more attention to me?" Mashiro said halfway, and his beautiful mouth pouted. Obviously, he was somewhat dissatisfied. Nangongja opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But because of the injuries on his body, he couldn't say a complete word for a long time. It was always a sound that couldn't be heard clearly. Seeing Nangongja's anxious look, Mashiro stretched out his hand and gently flicked Nangongja's forehead with his finger. "Fool, can't you see that I'm teasing you? Look at how anxious you are." After flicking Nangongja's forehead, Mashiro's face suddenly smiled. Just like the warm sun in winter, it was so beautiful that it made people feel intoxicated. Nangongja was a little dazed for a while. "You don't think so much. Just focus on recovering. Nangong-ro and I also talked about some things about you. This can be said to be the most serious injury you've suffered since you became a ninja. So, don't think so much, just focus on recovering. I heard that 3 generations have already gone to find Tsunade-sama and want her to come back to treat the wounded. As long as Tsunade-sama comes back, you'll be able to recover faster." Hearing Mashiro's words, Nangongja also relaxed for a while. When he was in the sand battlefield, Nangongja was very clear about how magical Tsunade's medical ninjutsu was. She was obviously a ninja with hematophobia, but she could perform surgery without causing a trace of bleeding. No one would believe such a thing even if he told them about it. Mashiro also saw that Nangongja's mood was relaxed at the moment, so he stood up, picked up the kettle on the table next to him, and poured a glass of water. Gently, as if he was protecting a fragile glass. He slowly helped Nangongja from lying down, one hand on Nangongja's back. The other hand held the cup and slowly fed Nangongja water. Cough, as if he choked, Nangongja coughed slightly. Mashiro immediately patted Nangongja's back and said softly, don't worry. Let's drink slowly." Mashiro was gentle like a warm spring, wrapping Nangongja's whole body. Chapter 70. After Nangongja woke up, he began a series of rehabilitation exercises. Nangong-ro, who came to visit later, said that Tsunade-sama had been found by Jiraiya-sama. But it seems that Tsunade didn't appear in public. Except for a few seriously injured ninjas, Tsunade didn't treat anyone else. It seems that Tsunade-sama has now made up her mind to leave Woodleaf. Nangongja remembered Tsunade's occasional confession in the sand battlefield. Coupled with Tsunade's current performance, he could probably guess Tsunade's thoughts. After all, the people who were seriously injured were probably some of the higher-ups of Woodleaf. Because the people who weren't strong enough were either lightly injured or killed by their injuries. So, Tsunade didn't care about the people she saved were Watergate and Uzumaki Shinakushina. In addition, Jiraiya, who was also a Sannin, begged her to come back to Woodleaf. And this time, when he came back, it could be said that he had exhausted the last bit of relationship with Konoha. It would be difficult to see Tsunade again in the future. But although Nangongja thought so, there was still an unexpected situation. Because Nangongja recovered quickly, he was discharged from the hospital and returned to Woodleaf's rebuilt home. When Nine Tails attacked the village, the Hatake family's residence was almost destroyed. The remaining members of the Hatake family were all mediocre in strength. Without White Fang's protection, most of the Hatake family members didn't have the opportunity to rebuild their own courtyard. Except for Kakashi, because he was the son of White Fang, and his talent was extremely high, and he was also the disciple of Woodleaf's 4th Hokage. So, he was allocated resources to rebuild his former residence. Nangongja, because of his extraordinary performance in the Battle of Nine Tails, the place where he lived was also restored. In order to celebrate Nangongja's discharge from the hospital, and to welcome Mashiro and Linger to Woodleaf, they planned to go to a restaurant and have a good meal. The few of them sat down and ordered the dishes. While waiting for the dishes, they chatted. "Do you all know each other?" Nangongja said to his sister, Mashiro, and Linger. "Yes, we do know each other, big brother." The two of them followed Tang Ren's team into Woodleaf village the day after Nine Tails attacked the village. They asked around and found me. Nangong-ro nodded. At the same time, she also nodded to Mashiro. It's all thanks to Sister Mashiro's help. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be able to take care of you. Sister? Hearing how Nangong-ro addressed Mashiro, Nangongja was slightly surprised. Looking at the dazed Nangongja, Mashiro extended her small hand and knocked on Nangongja's head. You. It's been so long and you still haven't asked me when I was born. When I chatted with Sister Rower, I found out that she was actually younger than me, so we called each other sisters. Although Nangongja's body was very well trained, and Mashiro didn't use too much strength. A simple knock on the head didn't hurt at all, but Nangongja still pretended to be pitiful and looked at Mashiro with teary eyes. Seeing Nangongja's funny look, Nangong-ro, Mashiro, and Linger all laughed. Big brother is so funny. Little Linger, I don't cry so easily. Little Linger covered her mouth and laughed. She also mocked Nangongja. Hearing Linger's words, Nangongja stopped pretending to be wronged and slowly walked behind Little Linger. He reached out and carried Little Linger and put her on his lap. Really? Little Linger is so amazing. Nangongja pretended to be surprised and looked at Little Linger. Of course. Hearing Nangongja's question, Little Linger seemed to be proud for a moment. She pouted and raised her head slightly. Her big eyes blinked as she looked at Nangongja. This adorable look really hit Nangongja's cuteness in an instant. Nangongja reached out and patted Little Linger's head. Our Little Linger is amazing. Seeing Nangongja and Little Linger's warm interaction, Nangong-ro and Mashiro also laughed. Seeing Mashiro and Nangong-ro's laughter, Little Linger looked at Nangongja in confusion. Big brother, why are the two sisters laughing? Nangongja also raised his head and saw the smiles on Nangong-ro and Mashiro's faces. Because they think Little Linger is very cute. The few of them still wanted to say something, but the sound of something heavy falling to the ground came from the door of the private room. After Nangongja carefully identified it, he felt that it was the sound of someone falling down because they were too drunk to walk. Fine. Let me go take a look and see who drank so much. Nangongja put Little Linger on the side and gestured to Nangong-ro and Mashiro. Then he stood up and opened the door of the izakaya. Nangongja was slightly surprised when he saw who it was. Because of the drunkenness in the aisle, it was his former battlefield commander, the Princess of Woodleaf, Tsunade Haim. Nangongja hurried over and helped Tsunade up from the ground. Tsunade-sama, are you okay? With that said, Nangongja also slightly mobilized the internal force in his body, trying to help Tsunade to clear her veins and restore her consciousness. But as if she sensed Nangongja's intention, Tsunade reached out and grabbed Nangongja's wrist. At the same time, she shook her head. Don't help me sober up. With my strength, unless I'm willing to get drunk, I won't be drunk. Today, Jiraiya, sensei, and I came here for a farewell meal. It's better to get drunk. Although Tsunade was drunk and couldn't even walk steadily, she spoke clearly. It was obvious that she deliberately drank so much to numb her body. Tsunade-sama. Are you really going to leave Woodleaf and not come back? As soon as he said that, Nangongja secretly scolded himself for his stupidity. Because Tsunade's omens had already shown her disappointment in Konoha. Not coming back. Tsunade shook her heavy head and muttered, who knows what will happen in the future. I also thought that I wouldn't come back after leaving Woodleaf last time. But Jiraiya told me that Shina Kushina was seriously injured and dying. I couldn't help but come back to save her. I thought I could be ruthless and completely abandon Woodleaf, but... After all, this is the village that my grandfathers built with their own hands. Maybe Tsunade really drank too much. Nangongja shouldn't know about Shina Kushina and other things. But these small things didn't matter. Nangongja could feel Tsunade's tangled emotions at this moment. Tsunade-sama. Since you've decided, then do it. If you regret it, Woodleaf will always be your home, right? I'll send you back first. If you don't go back after so long, Jiraiya-sama and the 3 generations may come out to find you. Tsunade nodded and agreed to Nangongja's proposal. Chapter 71. Under Tsunade's guidance, Nangongja found the box where Sandaime and Jiraiya were. After opening the door and explaining the situation, Nangongja left. After all, whether it's Jiraiya, Tsunade, or the 3 generations, they are all master and apprentice, and they are close to each other. There are some things that I know, and I heard. It doesn't make any sense, so it's better to rot in my stomach. There will be people who will worry about it. As for me, although I'm a Woodleaf ninja, even if I become the best jonin, I don't have any right to speak. This is the treatment that a ninja who was not trained by Woodleaf from childhood must receive. Nangongja returned to his box and noticed Mashiro and Nangong-ro's puzzled eyes. Just now, Tsunade-sama drank too much. I have sent Tsunade-sama to Sandaime and Jiraiya-sama's side. It's okay. Nangongja said, and at the same time, he waved his hand, indicating that there is no need to talk about this topic. Nangong-ro and Mashiro also knew that since there are some things that they don't understand, it's better not to ask. Speaking of which, Ro, have you been taking care of Yondaime's wife and child during this time? Nangongja suddenly remembered Nangong-ro's work that she occasionally mentioned to him before. After all, Yondaime gave him a good impression, so Nangongja still paid some attention to him. Yes, after Tsunade-sama came back, she began to treat Shinakushina-sama, who was seriously injured when Nine-Tails attacked the village. And Shinakushina-sama seemed to have premature birth because of Nine-Tails' attack. The child and she are very weak, so Kiba Hospital sent several medical ninjas to accompany them, and I was one of the shifts. Nangong-ro said, seeming to remember the situation of Shinakushina and the child. Her face was also slightly strange, maybe she was worried about the two's health. But it's strange, I don't know what Yondaime-sama and Shinakushina-sama think. They want the child to follow the mother's instinct, Uzumaki. Maybe Shinakushina-sama wanted to end the Uzumaki clan's decline? Nangong-ro also immediately said something that felt strange. After all, in the ninja world, most children follow their father's surname instead of their mother's surname. However, this is family's business. Everyone couldn't say anything. It was fine if they talked about it in private, but if they really wanted to make it public, it would be a little too nosy. Follow the mothers? Then, what's the child? He wasn't interested, he didn't was S's, but when he heard that Yondaime-sama's child followed the mother's surname, he became interested. Oh. Nangong-ro thought for a while, it seems that because the name was a bit strange, she was a bit speechless for a while. But soon, she patted her head and said the child's name, Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. This is the name of Yondaime-sama's child. Naruto? What a good name. It was fine if he did not make a sound, but once he did, he would amaze the world. Presumably, Yondaime-sama is full of expectations for his child, right? Just when Nangongja was sighing that Yondaime-sama gave his child a good name, the door of Nangongja's room was violently pushed open. Ha ha ha. Boy, you really have a good eye, it took me a long time to come up with this name. A white-haired uncle stood at the door and laughed, it's amazing. Well, yes, that's what I thought at the beginning. Nangongja naturally knew the person who came, whether it was the rock ninja battlefield or the izakaya box. Nangongja had seen this person before. It was one of the Sannin, Jiraiya. Really? This name was actually given by Jiraiya-sama? Nangongja suddenly understood why Jiraiya heard him praising Naruto's name and couldn't help but push the door open and laugh. Speaking of which, this is the name of the protagonist of my first novel? Jiraiya touched his chin with his hand and said with a proud face. Jiraiya-sama, do you still write novels? I haven't heard about it yet. Jiraiya-sama, can you tell me the name of the novel? I'll read it when I have time. Nangongja has always been like this, although he's very fierce in battle. But usually, he's very gentle and humble. Moreover, as one of the Sannin, Jiraiya-sama can write novels, it's interesting enough. Ha ha ha. You're a very good kid. Of course, I'll let you read the treasure that I wrote. Saying that, Jiraiya began to fumble in the ninja bag on his back. I can also give you an autograph. This is Jiraiya-sama's autograph. Thank me. After finding the book, Jiraiya opened the title page of the book. There was a calligraphy pen with Jiraiya's name on it. When Kakashi read my novel, he couldn't help himself. These days, he's been pestering me to write the next novel. He wants to read it as soon as possible. Jiraiya stretched out his hand and scratched his messy hair with a worried look, but what's with the proud look in his eyes? However, it was a book that could make Kakashi, who had an ice cube face, addicted. It's really something to look forward to. After taking the book from Jiraiya's hand, Nangongja was a little confused for a moment. The book had a dark red cover and the words, Intimate Paradise, written on it. More importantly, there were several scantily clad women on the cover who were flirting with each other. Wasn't this clearly a small book? But Nangongja still endured the strange feeling in his heart, took the book from Jiraiya, and put it in the small ninja bag on his back. Thank you, Jiraiya-sama. Just now, Tsunade-sama seemed to have drunk a lot of wine. Please pay more attention to Tsunade-sama and take care of Tsunade-sama. Nangongja's words were in line with etiquette. His words already had the intention of asking the guest to leave. After all, Nangongja can say that he's holding a family banquet. Jiraiya's status is very high, and they're not very close to each other, so Nangongja was a little reluctant to let Jiraiya join in. It's okay. I'll personally send Tsunade home, but you. Speaking of this, Jiraiya suddenly looked at Nangong-ro and Mashiro sitting behind him, and the wretched look in his eyes was about to explode. He stepped forward and patted Nangongja's shoulder. Young people still need to control themselves. His tone was earnest, just like an elder's. However, Nangongja felt that the words that came out of his mouth were awkward no matter how he listened. Control? Is this something an elder should say? Chapter 72. After Jiraiya said that, Nangongja could only helplessly look at the two girls sitting behind him. Unlike little Linger who didn't understand. Nangong-ro was blushing at the moment, but Mashiro didn't know why he was so interested. Hey. Is this still the Mashiro I know? You know, people always have a side that they don't know. Nangongja remembered Jiraiya's heroic figure on the rocks battlefield, and the way he used all kinds of ninjutsu. For a while, he felt that Jiraiya's image in his mind collapsed. Among the Sannin, Orochimaru had already betrayed the village, and Tsunade was also very disappointed with Woodleaf and drank heavily. Jiraiya, the only one who still retained a great and righteous image in Nangongja's mind, was actually an old pervert who loved to write small books. Also, if he didn't hear wrong, Jiraiya seemed to have given such a book to Kakashi. So, in fact, Kakashi was also a person who was cold on the outside but passionate on the inside. Nangongja suddenly remembered that when he was in the hospital, Kakashi also came to visit Yondaime-sama and his wife. On the bench in the corridor, he was holding a book with a serious face. He even laughed from time to time. This book can't be that book, right? Sure enough, ninjas are people who can't be judged by conventional means. Even if Kakashi was an iceberg youth, was he actually a stuffy young man in his heart? I didn't expect that Woodleaf is so famous. One of the candidates for the fourth Hokage, Jiraiya-sama, is actually, how should I put it, so bold and unrestrained. Mashiro sighed for a while. When Woodleaf was running for the fourth Hokage, Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, was actually very popular. Even the members of the Fire Country's royal family supported Jiraiya. But Jiraiya took the initiative to give up. Otherwise, why would the position of fourth Hokage be given to someone like Watergate? Even with the support of the three generations and Watergate's contribution was great. If Jiraiya wanted to, he could immediately become Woodleaf's Hokage. Okay. We'll just treat these people as a joke. I didn't expect that Woodleaf Sannin to be so promiscuous. Tsunade was a gambler. Orochimaru. Jiraiya. As expected, the disciples taught by the third-generation master were all unique. Ha! A burst of uncontrollable laughter rang out. It was actually Nangong Ro, who was blushing just now. Promiscuous. Ha! How did you come up with such a strange nickname? If he heard it, he... So, where was her? Why did she start laughing all of a sudden? Looking at his sister's appearance, Nangongja became even stupider than Gun. However, what followed was the laughter of the three women. Although the process was a bit different from what Nangongja imagined, the four of them could eat together and laugh. Isn't that great? Looking at Nangongja, who was talking to Mashiro, and Little Linger, who was stuffing all kinds of food into her mouth. For a moment, Nangongja felt that time was so wonderful. Just like that, they had a long meal in the izakaya. Time always flies, and it's hard to stop it. Nangongja cultivated in Woodleaf for 3 months. After the battle with Nine Tails, Nangongja couldn't fully explore the condition of his body because of excessive internal energy consumption. After that, because he had to slowly recuperate his body quickly recovered. Nangongja finally recovered. As Nangongja felt the vigorous inner strength that was surging like a river in his body, he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. It seemed that some strange shackles were removed from his body. Originally, Nangongja had a lot of conjectures in his heart. At this moment, the internal energy in his body had faithfully told Nangongja the answer. Internal energy and sword energy had the same root. They were bred by the same method, but they showed different interests. All things return to yin and embrace yang. Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, and three begets all things. The human body was like the most original one. The two natures of yin and yang were hidden in the human body, and the two natures of yin and yang nurtured the three basic forces of the human body. How similar was the relationship between yin and yang, internal energy, and sword energy? Perhaps, the road paved by the earliest people who cultivated internal energy was to harmonize internal energy and sword energy. There was gentleness, and there was violence. The two harmonized with each other, and one was indispensable. Only then could the true power of internal energy be unleashed. However, under the washing of the river of time, many methods of harmonizing internal energy and sword energy had been exhausted. After Nangongja woke up, Nangong Ro explained to Nangongja that she had used a crystal left by her grandfather to save the violent internal energy in her body. Perhaps it was a method of harmonizing sword energy and internal energy in ancient times? Nangongja shook his head to clear these messy thoughts out of his mind. He changed into a black short swordsman's uniform and held a black sword in his hand. He walked to the center of the courtyard. It was already the middle of winter. Woodleaf had also snowed a few times. Nangongja's courtyard was also filled with sparkling white snowflakes. Just like that, Nangongja walked barefooted to the center of the snow. He did not use the internal energy flowing in his body. Instead, he slowly began to dance with the black sword in his hand. His swordsmanship was light and gentle. It was as if a young girl was reaching out her soft hands and gently caressing her lover. The young girl seemed to be opening her mouth to speak, but she swallowed her words. The soft silk slowly narrated on the tip of the sword. What about Nangongja? At this moment, he was thinking about Mashiro's gentleness and care for him. The more he thought about it, the gentler his swordsmanship became. Little Linger wrapped herself in a cotton-padded coat and opened the door of her room. She wanted to ventilate the room. After all, the charcoal stove in the room was warm. However, there was a strange smell. Coincidentally, she saw Nangongja practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard. Little Linger did not understand how profound Nangongja's swordsmanship was. However, the light and graceful swordsmanship was like a dance. Little Linger was mesmerized. Brother's swordsmanship is so beautiful. The little stars in her eyes were about to pop out. Nangong Ro and Mashiro heard Little Linger's exclamation and came to Little Linger's door. Mashiro did not understand. Little Linger did not understand. However, how could Nangong Ro not understand? That soft affection was slowly expressed along with the swordsmanship. So, brother's feelings for someone are so deep that it affects his swordsmanship? Nangong Ro sighed. Her eyes could not help but look at Mashiro, who was beside her. Chapter 73. Mashiro didn't notice Nangong Ro's gaze. After all, Mashiro was just an ordinary person who didn't know ninjutsu. Moreover, he was focused on Nangongja's sword dance. However, with the gentle narration of love, Nangongja's swordsmanship slowly changed. It was no longer the entanglement between lovers. Instead, it was a ball of fire that warmed and illuminated the world. Unknowingly, internal energy was slowly injected into the sword. Although the amount of inner force wasn't large, it was able to display extraordinary power. The cracks on the black sword's body slowly emitted a faint red glow. That's right. The black sword existed for the sake of true inner strength. Only with true internal energy could the black sword be used to its full potential. There was a huge difference between internal energy and chakra. Especially in combat, chakra ninjutsu had the 5 attributes of water, fire, wind, earth, and lightning. A qualified ninja could use ninjutsu of at least 1 attribute. A jonin could use ninjutsu of more attributes. The most famous would leaf ninjutsu professor, Ninja AO, 3 generations of Hokage. Yuan Fei Sasuke could even use 5 types of ninjutsu and master their nature and form changes. What about internal energy? In a one-on-one fight, internal energy could cut and block the transmission and application of chakra. However, in a large-scale battle between armies, a person who cultivated internal energy was far less useful than a ninja who was proficient in chakra. Therefore, the black sword was a great breakthrough. It was a tool that allowed internal energy cultivators to have the ability to fight in a large-scale battle. It wasn't sharp, and it wasn't something that was unusually strong. It didn't even have the magical effect of sucking blood. The black sword was a key. A key that could help the user communicate with the power of heaven and earth. Through the user's internal energy, it could guide the power of heaven and earth that lingered around the world. Of course, Nangongja didn't know that much. He just subconsciously transmitted his internal energy into the black sword. The warm winter sun peeked out from the thick clouds, revealing its face. A ray of sunlight shone on Nangongja's body, seemingly intentional but also seemingly unintentional. The light within the slits of the black sword shone even brighter. The swordsmanship no longer had the gentle feeling it had at the beginning. Instead, it was a ball of fire, a great sun. It emitted its own light without restraint, as if it wanted to dispel all the haze in this world. A clear voice suddenly sounded. If one had to describe it, it was like the sound of water droplets. And that was indeed the case. With Nangongja's feet as the center, the thick snow began to melt slowly. At first, it only melted a little. However, the sun didn't seem to be satisfied that it could only cause such a small effect. It became even more dazzling. The ice and snow in the courtyard began to melt at a speed visible to the naked eye. The melted ice and snow gradually converged into a stream. The sun was so bright, but it didn't evaporate the water with the heat. It just let it flow. The snow water seeped into the soil. With an almost imperceptible sound, a small blade of grass sprouted from the soil. It seemed to be a little confused and sleepy. It hadn't endured the cold winter yet, but it grew out just like that. However, the sun's light still shone on it. It dispelled the remaining trace of wilt. It made its emerald green even brighter. As if they had received the encouragement of this small grass, the other small grasses also began to emerge from the soil. Soon, the entire courtyard was covered with green blades of grass. What about the cherry blossom tree that had withered in autumn, and half of it had been burned in the battle with the nine-tailed beast? It began to grow buds one after another. The buds grew spontaneously. They turned into branches. One by one, the buds formed and bloomed. For a moment, the courtyard was full of spring. As for Little Linger, Mashiro, and Nangong Ro, they had long been mesmerized and stunned by the scene. Although Nangongja had always been a rare powerhouse in their hearts, they had never seen him before. But this kind of violation of the laws of nature allowed the grass and withered trees to sprout and bloom in such a short time? It was simply beyond people's imagination. And Nangongja seemed to be exhausted. He slowly put the long sword in his hand back into the scabbard on his back. He opened his eyes and looked at the green around him. He smiled happily. With a light leap, he broke off a branch full of cherry blossoms. He walked in front of Little Linger. Didn't Little Linger complain to brother that winter has been long? Then, brother will turn the entire courtyard into spring. There will be flowers and green grass. Nangongja said and smiled. He handed the branch in his hand to Little Linger. And Little Linger? She just took it in a daze. It seemed that the little girl still hadn't recovered from the shock. Brother, just now you, Nangong Ro couldn't help but speak. Using a human body to go against the heavens and change the environment of a small area. Was this really something that a human could do? Don't be so surprised. This isn't my power, it's the power of the entire world. Nangongja shook his head. After all, he wasn't one of those legendary gods. I used my internal energy to attract the power of the world. Let a part of the power of nature become my own power. It's actually not difficult to change the environment. Nangongja seemed to want to say something, but he suddenly turned his head and looked behind him. One of his hands grabbed the hilt of the black sword on his back. Soon, at the end of the horizon, a small dot rushed in Nangongja's direction at an extremely fast speed. At first, it was difficult to see the appearance of the person. But soon, Nangongja let go of the hilt in his hand. It was very simple. Because in Nangongja's eyes was a huge toad. Only the Sannin of Jiraiya's family had such a summon beast. The Yondaime was still recuperating in Kiba Hospital. So, who else could it be but Jiraiya? Boom! The toad landed, and a figure with long white hair also landed in front of Nangongja. Who used senjutsu? Jiraiya asked anxiously. In fact, Jiraiya hadn't been in contact with senjutsu for a long time. He was still in the cultivation stage. But he could still use his perception. The wood leaf incident was over because the Yondaime didn't reply. So, Jiraiya didn't leave the wood leaf immediately. Instead, he listened to his teacher's advice and temporarily stayed in the wood leaf. Suddenly, he felt the fluctuation of senjutsu that he thought was a secret technique of Mount Myaboku, so he naturally came to take a look. Jiraiya-sama? Nangongja was actually a little confused. Because he didn't know what senjutsu Jiraiya was talking about. Senjutsu is? It's the power that turned this place into spring. Jiraiya said hurriedly. If I'm not wrong, the senjutsu you mentioned should be the power that I recently learned to attract nature, right? Chapter 74. Is it really the power of nature? Such a magical effect, in Jiraiya's impression, only the first Hokages would release, and the two toads of Mount Mayaboku have this kind of effect. Wait for me a moment. Seeing Nangongja's doubts, Jiraiya could only stretch out his hands. He wanted Nangongja to wait for a moment. Then, Jiraiya turned around and said to the giant toad standing behind him, "Don't worry. Toad Osamu, you go back to Mount Mayaboku first. Inform Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin. I found a ninja in Woodleaf Village who uses the power of nature. I hope to bring him to Mount Mayaboku to figure out what's going on." At this time, Jiraiya didn't have the wretched appearance he showed in front of Nangongja. On the contrary, he was too overbearing. He didn't even consult Nangongja's opinion and began to make all kinds of arrangements. "Jiraiya-sama." Nangongja patted Jiraiya's shoulder, hoping that Jiraiya would look at him. What? Jiraiya turned his head. He was halfway through his words. He already saw Nangongja's slightly cold eyes. Even if Nangongja's position in Woodleaf wasn't as high as him, he wasn't one of the leaders of Woodleaf. But it's still undeniable that Nangongja's power can be ranked in Woodleaf. What's more, Woodleaf experienced the Third Shinobi World War, and Nine Tails attacked the village. All kinds of talents were somewhat withered. The Sannin who could have become the new pillar of Woodleaf betrayed and left. As for Jiraiya, he was busy investigating a mysterious organization hidden in the dark. To put it bluntly, Nangongja was already one of the important forces guarding Woodleaf. For such a person, Jiraiya's attitude was a bit too much. "Sorry, I lost my composure." Jiraiya, who understood the ins and outs, didn't put on any airs in front of Nangongja. Instead, he openly apologized. "It's mainly because nature's chakra is too important for us ninjas. Everyone knows that the first Hokage of Woodleaf Village, the Shinobi no Kami, Senju Takuma. The reason why he was able to conquer the world and subdue the nine-tailed beasts was because of his legendary Mokuton ninjutsu. But today, there is no one who can use the wood escape technique. The first Hokage can be said to be the only ninja in the known history who can use Mokuton. Even Senju Takuma, the younger brother of the first Hokage, can't use this magical technique. We've never been able to explain what's going on, but my sensei, the third Hokage of Konoha, is the direct disciple of the first and second Hokage, and there are various signs of him using wood release against the first Hokage. The most important element to use Mokuton is nature's chakra." Nangongja was a little confused when he heard this. About the power of the first Hokage, as long as one lives in the shinobi world, almost everyone has heard about it. But according to Jiraiya, controlling nature's chakra can use Mokuton? This is obviously not the case, because at this moment, Nangongja can control and draw on some nature's chakra. But he can only draw on the grass that already exists, and the dead tree that still has a trace of vitality. Compared with the first Hokage's method of creating a forest out of thin air, and every branch can absorb and suppress Chakra's chakra, it's really a far cry, isn't it? Jiraiya-sama. I can use nature's chakra only because I draw on a small amount of nature's chakra with my own strength. There is no such thing as the miracle of Mokuton. I don't practice chakra like most ninjas, so did you misunderstand something? Although Jiraiya is still a little impatient, after understanding how important Nangongja is, he still listened to Nangongja's doubts. Indeed, it's not that you can use nature's chakra to use Mokuton. Because the first Hokage has completely retained nature's chakra in his body. Absorbing and assimilating nature's chakra. There is no barrier between nature's chakra and nature's chakra. The summoned beasts of the Sannin are all from ancient races. It was Master who specially searched for us. It was because of the desire to reproduce Mokuton that we signed a summon contract with these 3 summon beast clans. However, after Orochimaru's test, we found that it's impossible to integrate nature's chakra with nature's chakra like the first Hokage. Any attempt to completely integrate oneself into nature's chakra will only result in failure. You'll only turn yourself into a frog, a python, or even a slug. Nangongja didn't ask why Jiraiya knows that failure will lead to such a tragic end. Because as long as it involves the first Hokage's Mokuton, Woodleaf's plan, and Orochimaru, it won't be anything positive, will it? So, you're looking for a new way to integrate nature's chakra into your body? Nangongja finally understood the plan of Jiraiya or Woodleaf Hokage. Nangongja. Do you know how important Mokuton is to Woodleaf? Woodleaf now has a Senju with half or even one-third of the power of the first Hokage. Woodleaf will not be just one of the 5 great shinobi villages in the world. Jiraiya said, and a fire seemed to burn in his eyes. A pair of big hands grabbed Nangongja's shoulders. The huge force almost made Nangongja grimace. This is, the seemingly amiable, and sometimes even perverted Jiraiya? At this moment, in Nangongja's eyes, Jiraiya was more like a person who was blinded by religious fanaticism. Is this the reason why you want to take me to the place called Mount Myaboku? Nangongja didn't show any emotion, but Nangongro, Mashiro, and Little Linger were standing in the room looking at Nangongja with a worried face. Such a scene was too stressful for the girls. That's one of the Sannin, Jiraiya. His every move can almost represent the attitude of the entire Woodleaf. And Nangongja? For those who are interested in Mokuton, he's just a precious living material. Even if Nangongja is really exhausted? Anyway, he's not a ninja trained by Woodleaf, so there's no need to worry. Although Woodleaf is now green and yellow. But what if? What if they can find the secret of Mokuton from Nangongja? Make Mokuton a regular jutsu of Woodleaf? That's really exciting. Chapter 75. Just when Nangongja wanted to say something to Jiraiya, Jiraiya suddenly turned around and quickly made hand seals, summoning Gamadame who had just disappeared. Jiraiya-sama, Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin have agreed to your request. Although this Nangong Jonin didn't sign a contract with Mount Myaboku, because it involves senjutsu, the 2 Sennin have made special permission to reverse summon Nangongja Jonin to Mount Myaboku. Gamadame seemed to be a straightforward person, and he didn't say much and immediately reported the decision of the 2 Sennin to Jiraiya. When Jiraiya heard the news, he nodded and looked at Nangongja. I'm sorry, Nangong-jun. Because senjutsu and natural energy have a wide range of effects. I have to take you to Mount Myaboku and investigate what's going on. Jiraiya seemed to be a little apologetic and said, but, please rest assured that it will never endanger your life and the normal lives of your family and friends. I promise you with my title as a Sannin. At this time, Jiraiya seemed to have calmed down, and he didn't look like a fanatic anymore. Nangongja wanted to believe Jiraiya's words. After all, Jiraiya has already promised Nangongja with his title. But Nangongja couldn't help but speculate in his heart. Is this a disguised threat? If I refuse, does it mean that whether it's Nangong-ro, Mashiro, or Little Linger, they will tremble under the threat of Woodleaf? Don't say that Nangongja's thoughts are too extreme. As long as people who have really seen the various dark sides of the major ninja villages, they will have such thoughts. White Fang's example was right in front of his eyes. In that case, I'll leave it to Jiraiya-sama. Nangongja could only nod, indicating that he agreed with Jiraiya's proposal. That's good, I'll start preparing the reverse summoning technique now. Hearing Nangongja's agreement, Jiraiya immediately looked happy. Immediately, he put the huge scroll on his back on the ground and unfolded it. His fingertips fluttered, and he quickly printed hand seals. Ninjutsu, reverse summoning technique. He pressed his bloody hand to the ground, and a spell spread on the ground. When the spell ended, a burst of brilliance also rose from the spell. So, Jiraiya didn't say anything and pointed. He pointed to the formation array to do so. His meaning to wanted to step. Just to step into the array, and little, s to s's to twos to him to and linger, and stood. As to say to say something. As to s. But Nan Gongzhi immediately shook his head and stopped Nan Gongro from saying what she wanted to say. There were some things that once said, there was no room for negotiation. Don't worry, Jiraiya-sama is one of Woodleaf's Sannin. Such a person can be trusted if he swears by his own name. I'll be there soon, take care of Mashiro and little Linger. Although Nan Gongzhi said so, his eyes flickered on his face that Jiraiya couldn't see. Nan Gongro and Nan Gongzhi have been together for a long time. Nan Gongzhi's little tricks were naturally familiar to her. However, it was precisely because of this that she couldn't do anything unusual. She just nodded, and then said, I understand, Oni-san, you can rest assured and follow Jiraiya-sama. I'll take good care of Mashiro, San and Ling-er. Nan Gongro said firmly and seriously. Nan Gongzhi didn't say anything more, because he believed in her. His younger sister had already understood what he meant. Then, he turned and walked into the array. And Jiraiya? After taking a deep look at Nan Gongro, he also followed Nan Gongzhi's footsteps into the array. However, a faint sigh still reverberated in the air. I didn't expect that even Nan Gongzhi's sister is also a strange woman. Seeing Nan Gongzhi and Jiraiya's figures disappear, Nan Gongro also turned around and returned to her room with Mashiro and little Linger. She closed the door. In the forest outside Nangong's house, several figures suddenly flashed by, making people feel dazzled. After closing the door, Nan Gongro said to Mashiro and little Linger, Mashiro, San, and little Linger. You all go to your rooms and pack your luggage. If there's nothing wrong, it's okay, but if there's something wrong, we'll leave Woodleaf immediately. Then she walked into Nan Gongzhi's room and opened a secret door in the closet. This time, I'm sure that something unusual will happen. And Mashiro? She just took little Linger's hand and walked to their rooms to pack their luggage. The tree wants to be quiet, but the wind doesn't stop. I didn't expect that even in the most peaceful Woodleaf, Mia still has to be on edge. Mashiro thought silently. At the same time, Nan Gongzhi and Jiraiya arrived at the legendary Mount Mayaboku. Here. Is this the legendary Mount Mayaboku that was passed down from the Sage of the Six Paths? At this moment, Nan Gongzhi didn't have the gloomy feeling he had when he left Woodleaf. After all, things have already reached this point. Even if he had other plans, it doesn't make any sense. Mount Mayaboku can be said to be the most secure prison. It's a small world independent of the shinobi world. Even if Nan Gongzhi wanted to escape, how can he escape? So, since he's here, he might as well take it easy. He might as well take a good look at the lake and mountains, and listen to the chirping of birds and cicadas. Indeed, Mount Mayaboku is indeed a paradise far away from the chaos of the shinobi world. However, once something happens in the shinobi world, Mount Mayaboku will still be unable to protect itself. This space is attached to the main space of the shinobi world. If the skin doesn't exist, what's the hair? Jiraiya is actually a person who wants to avoid the world, but the sense of responsibility and justice in his heart doesn't allow him to get away from it. Maybe, he's just born to be busy, right? One day, maybe he will be burdened by the sense of responsibility and justice in his heart and die here. So, are we going to meet the Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin you just mentioned? Nan Gongzhi suddenly remembered the conversation between Jiraiya and Toad Isamu just now. Obviously, this so-called Shima Sannin and Fukasaku Sannin are the current leaders of Mount Mayaboku. No, young man. We're already here. An old voice sounded behind Nan Gongzhi. Nan Gongzhi hurriedly turned around and bowed deeply. Greetings to the two Sannin. Looking at Nan Gongzhi's respectful appearance, Fukasaku Sannin and Shima Sannin seemed to be very happy. I haven't seen such a polite boy for a long time. Little Jiraiya, can't you learn from this young man? Chapter 76. Hearing Fukasaku Sennin's words, Jiraiya was a little embarrassed for a while. After all, Jiraiya had heard this kind of conversation from Fukasaku Sennin too many times. Fukasaku Sennin, this kid is my junior. Can't you give me some face? Although Jiraiya knew that he couldn't stop Fukasaku Sennin from mocking him, he couldn't help but say this. What about Fukasaku Sennin? He didn't pay attention to Jiraiya's words at all. Instead, he continued to talk to Nangongja. Boy, don't be so formal. Just think of me as a slightly older elder to you. Fukasaku Sennin's behavior made Nangongja feel that this Sennin didn't seem to be the kind of person he imagined. Instead, he was very kind. So Nangongja also raised his bowing posture. Okay, then I'll boldly call you Fukasaku Sennin. Fukasaku Sennin seemed to be happy that someone called him that, so he laughed. Ha ha ha, boy. You are really different from Jiraiya. I like it very much. Nangongja looked up, trying to find Fukasaku Sennin's figure. Whether it was Toad Isamu or Toad Buntai. It seems that the higher the seniority, the bigger the size. This is also one of the major characteristics of the psychic beast group. But to Nangongja's surprise, Fukasaku Sennin's figure, how to describe it? It's a little too small, like the size of an ordinary toad. It's just that his chin has a white goatee, and he's wearing a somewhat shabby cloth robe. He looks a little ordinary. What's wrong, boy? Are you curious why I'm so small? Fukasaku Sennin seemed to see Nangongja's thoughts and began to ask Nangongja. But he didn't wait for Nangongja's answer and said it himself. Indeed, according to common sense, psychic beasts are generally stronger the bigger the size. Regardless of whether it was the tailed beasts or the many famous spiritual beasts, they were all very large. However, my wife and I are one of the few people in Mount Mystic Wood who have succeeded in cultivating natural energy, and we have begun to slowly restrain ourselves. If I were to reveal my true form, I would be 2 or 3 times bigger than that brat one Tai, right? So that's how it was? Nangongja suddenly thought of the black lion, Li Yang, that was hiding in his body. Back then, Li Yang was also able to restrain himself. After all, if it was too big, it would be troublesome in terms of combat and other aspects. All right, old man. Stop showing off in front of the boy. And why did you say that about Jiraiya Kid? Obviously, Jiraiya Kid is also very polite, right? A voice different from Fukasaku Sennin's came from behind Nangongja. Nangongja looked back. A toad dressed as a lady was standing on Jiraiya's shoulder at the moment. She must be the other Sennin, Shima Sennin, right? Greetings, Shima Sennin. Nangongja still respectfully saluted Shima Sennin. Ioyo, just like what the old man said, you are a polite child. Seeing that one person and 2 toads were about to start a long conversation, Jiraiya interrupted their mutual praise. As for whether it was to prevent the 2 Sennin from criticizing him for being rude, Jiraiya would never admit it. 2 Sennin, let's solve the main purpose of my coming here. Hearing what Jiraiya said, the 2 Sennin seemed to remember that Nangongja could use natural energy. Okay, let's get down to business. Fukasaku Sennin straightened his robe and coughed softly. It seemed that he was ready to get down to business. It's like this, Nangong Kid. About your natural energy, Jiraiya has already told us about it through Brave Toad. Fukasaku Sennin glanced at Jiraiya, and Jiraiya nodded at the same time, indicating Fukasaku Sennin to continue. Jiraiya Kid's character, we 2 old men and old women are very clear about it. When it comes to the topic of natural energy, he will definitely be rude at the time. I hope you don't mind. Hearing this, Jiraiya couldn't help but smile awkwardly. After all, he did go a bit too far at the time. At this moment, Fukasaku Sennin actually apologized for him, which was really embarrassing. And Nangongja heard Fukasaku Sennin's words, and the stone in his heart also dissipated a little. It's okay. I also know what natural energy means to Woodleaf and the 3 summoned beast holy lands. Although Jiraiya-sama did lose control of his emotions at that time, he didn't do anything strange. Hearing Nangongja's words, Fukasaku Sennin also nodded. Well, very good. Then let's continue the topic of natural energy. The way we use natural energy inherited by Mount Myaboku is to absorb small natural energy particles from the air and other places, mix it with chakra in your body, and generate a higher energy form called Senjutsu chakra. Although it's also an application of natural energy, it's a trick. But it's a shortcut. After all, it doesn't use natural energy in the true sense. Because it's impossible for ordinary people to circulate natural energy smoothly in their body. Once they lose control, it will cause natural energy to go berserk and petrify themselves. Fukasaku Sennin stretched out his hand and pointed to the huge stone frogs around him. These huge stone frogs are actually humans or are people who fail to cultivate natural energy. If a toad fails to cultivate senjutsu, it will be petrified. Once a human fails to cultivate, it will lose its human form and petrify. Looking at the countless stone frogs around him, Nangongja felt a chill in his heart for a while. The natural energy that he can attract is actually such a dangerous thing? But you're different, you're using natural energy. Even without chakra's natural energy, your form didn't change, and the power in your body didn't go berserk. It's really amazing. This is also the reason why Jiraiya brought you to Mount Myaboku even if he lost his composure. But, Fukasaku Sennin said, but suddenly shook his head and even sighed, I don't understand how you did it. Before I came here to see you, Toad Sennin had already given an order. I hope I can take you to see him. When Nangongja heard Fukasaku Sennin's words, his mind turned. In fact, his understanding of natural energy is not that deep. He thought that the person called Toad Sennin should give him a convincing explanation, right? Chapter 77. Toad Sage is a great existence that has existed since the era of 6 Paths Sennin. He is the guardian of Mount Myaboku. Generally, Great Sage doesn't intervene in the secular affairs of Mount Myaboku. This time, the great immortal Toad specially ordered us to bring you to see him. Fukasaku Sennin said and took Nangongja to the depths of Mount Myaboku. Li Yang, did this Toad Sage really exist since the era of 6 Paths Sennin? Nangongja silently said to Li Yang, who was hiding in his body. Toad? 6 Paths Sennin. It seems to be the old Toad. He didn't know if Li Yang realized that he was cursing himself, but it was obvious that Li Yang actually knew this so-called Toad Sage. If I didn't guess wrong, this guy who calls himself Toad Sage. Isn't he Toadmaru? Li Yang muttered to himself, but Nangongja also heard it clearly. Is Li Yang also such an existence that has witnessed countless history and thousands of heroes? Can this Toad Sage really explain to me that I can use the power of nature? In fact, Nangongja has been secretly communicating with Li Yang since he entered Mount Myaboku. Originally, he thought that using the power of nature is a matter of course. At most, it's a different form of power from ninjutsu. But since Jiraiya began to eagerly force Nangongja knew that the power of nature is very important. Although Li Yang has some understanding of the power of nature, he can't explain why Nangongja can use a sword to communicate with heaven and earth and use the power of nature. This is one of the reasons why Nangongja was willing to follow Jiraiya to Mount Myaboku. Even if a person can use the power of nature. But even if he knows how, he doesn't know why. It's better not to have such power that he can't control. This is Nangongja's request for himself. Todamaru seems to have learned a dream entry technique from the 6 Paths. Through entering dreams, one could observe the 3 realms and even foresee the future. He did have some skills. If there was really someone in this world who could answer your questions, then Toadball was indeed the best candidate. Of course, the premise is that this old man won't deliberately scheme against you. As Li Yang spoke, she was also worried. It was obvious that this Toad Maru, who was known as the Great Toad Immortal. His image in Li Yang wasn't that good. Even an old man would become a spirit, let alone an ancient spiritual beast that had been through many trials and tribulations. Even between Nangongzhe and Li Yang, if it weren't for the fact that their lives were linked, Li Yang wouldn't have been able to get along with him. Nangongzhe would not treat Li Yang with such sincerity. After all, he had to survive in such a dangerous world. It was better to be as careful as possible, right? The conversation between Nangongzhe and Li Yang continued, and Nangongzhe himself seemed to have reached the deepest part of Mount Myaboku. A huge altar was built in a deep and serene cave. A huge toad was sitting in the middle of the altar, half asleep and half awake. Great Immortal! Great Immortal! That young man called Nangongzhe, we have brought him here. Fukasaku jumped a few times and arrived beside Great Immortal Toad's ear. He shouted strenuously. Great Immortal Toad seemed to have woken up because of Fukasaku's shout. Ugh, a faint groan could be heard, and Immortal Toad's eyes opened a slit. Its dim yellow eyes seemed to have a bit of confusion from just waking up, as well as a kind of turbidity due to old age. Nan, Gong. The Great Immortal Toad muttered softly. After a while, it seemed to remember the name Nangong. Is it the person who cultivated internal energy and can use natural energy? It's been a long time, a long time. I haven't seen such a person. As Great Immortal Toad said this, his eyes began to look at Nangongzhe's figure, and he became silent. After a long silence, Nangongzhe felt that he couldn't leave in silence. Thus, he slightly bowed and said, "Would Leaf Jonin, Nangongzhe." Greetings, Great Immortal Toad. Hearing Nangongzhe's words, Great Immortal Toad wanted to say something. However, he suddenly swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. You seem to have an old friend in your left arm? Sure enough, Great Immortal Toad's eyesight was extremely shocking. However, in such a short period of time, he discovered that there was another soul residing in Nangongzhe's left arm. Boy, let me out. Since an old friend invited me, I naturally have to show my face. Hearing Li Yang's words, Nangongzhe bit his right thumb, lifted the clothes on his left arm, and pressed his bloody finger on the lion head seal. Show yourself. Li Yang. An array formed above Nangongzhe, and Li Yang's huge head poked out of the array. Accompanied by lightning and thunder, Li Yang's body began to appear little by little. Finally, after a while, Li Yang's huge body appeared in the depths of Mount Myaboku. Old Toad, it's been a long time. Li Yang's majestic and domineering voice instantly resounded throughout the cave. Is this Nangongzhe's summon beast? Jiraiya looked at Li Yang's huge body, and an old memory surfaced in his mind. It was this summon beast named Li Yang that followed Nangongzhe's rock shinobi to the battlefield. It contributed a lot to Woodleaf's victory. Although Jiraiya knew that this summon beast was not ordinary, he really didn't expect that this black lion was actually from the same generation as Great Immortal Toad. It's you. The Great Immortal Toad seemed to have seen Li Yang's figure. In an instant, his slightly opened eyes suddenly widened. The dim, sleepy, and dirty eyes all disappeared for a while. You madman are still alive? Li Yang heard Great Immortal Toad call him a madman, and for a while, he seemed to have heard a joke. He laughed, and at the same time, lightning surged. Li Yang's figure shrank little by little. This figure was the one Nangongzhe saw in his mind. A man wearing a black cloak. Everyone says that I'm a madman, but in such a world. If I'm not a madman, how can I be free? Li Yang said with a smile. But whether it was Great Immortal Toad, Shima Fukasaku, or even Jiraiya, they were all shocked by such a mighty man. What kind of courage did he have to say such words? Chapter 78. Fine, fine. I already know what kind of character you have. Saying such words, this is the proud black lion I know. Although Toad Sage was shocked by Li Yang's words for a while, he quickly returned to normal. So, whether it's the insidious and cunning old snake or the gentle slug, your words are still the most pleasing to the ear. It's been a long time, old Toad. Li Yang maintained her human form and stood beside immortal Toad. But, this scene is very strange. After all, although Li Yang's human form is very tall and burly, standing in front of Toad Sage, he's not even as big as Toad Sage's claw. It's really funny, isn't it? Toad Sage also looked at Nan Gongzhi at this moment. I have been wondering, although you can communicate with natural energy. But as long as you come in contact with natural energy, it will inevitably affect the shape of your body. But you didn't change at all. It seems that Black Lion has put a lot of effort in this regard. Nan Gongzhi heard these words and was a little confused. After all, Li Yang never told him that he helped him control the flow of natural energy into his body. But Li Yang shook his head at this moment. He signaled Nan Gongzhi not to talk more. It seems that he didn't want Toad Sage to know the details of this matter. I don't know, Toad Sage, can you explain to me why I can communicate with natural energy? Whether it's Jiraiya-sama or Fukasaku-shima. It's very clear that natural energy is a great and dangerous power. Nan Gongzhi's words entered immortal Toad's ears without missing a single word. Toad Sage was also very clear about Nan Gongzhi's concerns about natural energy. A huge force was like a bomb that could explode at any time if one didn't understand it well enough. That's true. After Li Yang lost contact with him, this method of cultivating inner strength with natural energy appeared. Great Immortal Toad said slowly, but from time to time, he would glance at Li Yang who was standing by his feet. Inner strength has a huge flaw. I'm sure you, Nan Gong, are the clearest about this. That is the danger of becoming a demon. In the long history of the world, there have been countless people who turned into devils after cultivating their inner strength. Among them, there are also quite a number of people who have almost become heavenly demons who have slaughtered the world. However, those who have fallen into the demonic path are actually squandering their potential and life without any scruples. When the power of the bedevilment declines, they will die from exhaustion of their life force. There has never been a lack of geniuses in the world. There was once a brilliant inner strength cultivator who, for some reason, managed to retain a part of his mind after he turned into a demon. As his life force continued to decline, he searched for many ways to save himself. Of course, it was because he had entered the demonic path. His temperament has also become extremely irritable, resulting in many killings. Until, he forced his way into the slug's wet bone forest. The great immortal Toad paused for a moment as he spoke. His eyes were filled with helplessness and resentment. This genius who had entered the demonic path defeated the protector of the wet-bone forest, the slug. He took away an important item of the wet-bone forest's immortal technique inheritance. Although I don't know what it is. Thinking about it. Immortal Toad looked at the black sword on Nan Gongzhi's back. It has a lot to do with the sword on your back. Natural energy is the power of heaven and earth. It hides a majestic life force. As long as you can suppress the riot of natural energy, you can recover the life force you've lost. Although it can only treat the symptoms and not the root cause, it can still slow down the loss of life force. However, this genius still failed. I've thought about it many times. Why is that? After all, although his way of thinking is a bit too idealistic, but from a theoretical level, this method still has a certain degree of feasibility. After this genius who had entered the demonic path died, this sword was passed down from generation to generation. It seems that the sword intent of this genius is hidden within, and it can guide the path of the sword for future generations. And you are the second person who can use internal force and natural energy at the same time. Although I have inherited the dream technique from the Rikudo Sennin, there are some secrets that I still can't know. Immortal Toad said with an apologetic look in his eyes. I don't know what's going on with these things. Maybe this road that hasn't been finished by others needs you to continue. After saying this, the great Immortal Toad closed his eyes. Clearly, he wanted to chase the guests away. Fukasaku Sennin also understood the meaning of Immortal Toad at this moment. Obviously, he wanted to ask Nangongzhe and Jiraiya to leave here. And Riang? Fukasaku Sennin felt that he really had no way. After all, this Black Lion's seniority was too high. Jiraiya boy, and Nangong boy. It seemed like Great Immortal Toad and Black Lion Liang were going to say something. It's time for dinner now. Why don't you stay in Mount Mayaboku and have dinner before leaving? Shima Sennin suddenly said after leaving the Toad Cave for some distance. When Jiraiya heard such a sentence, his face instantly turned green. Nangongzhe looked at Jiraiya's strange face and had a bad feeling in his heart. Just as he was about to say something to decline, Shima Sennin's sharp eyes looked at Nangongzhe like a knife. I can't refuse an elder's gift. Since Shima Sennin wants to invite me to dinner, then I naturally can't refuse. After a long time, Riang and Immortal Toad seemed to have finished talking. It turned into a stream of light and entered the lion head seal on Nangongzhe's left arm. After leaving only a sentence, he fell into a deep sleep. And Nangongzhe? At this moment, his face was green, and it didn't seem to be a good time to talk about business. In the steaming smoke, Nangongzhe and Jiraiya returned to Woodleaf Village. Without waiting for the smoke to dissipate, Jiraiya covered his mouth and stomach and hurriedly ran back to his home with a wisp of smoke. Oniai-san, you're back? Hearing the movement outside, Nangong-ro also opened the door and saw Nangongzhe with a very ugly face at the moment. What's wrong with you? Why do you look so ugly? Looking at Nangongzhe's strange look, Nangong-ro quickly ran to Nangongzhe's side and helped Nangongzhe into the room. It's nothing. I just ate something I never thought I would eat. At this moment, Nangongzhe's eyes seemed to be swaying all kinds of insects. Who would have thought that the so-called dinner in Mount Mayaboku was 100 insects feast? Chapter 79. After Nangongzhe returned from Mount Mayaboku, he lay in bed for 2 days before he recovered. During the meal, he heard that Jiraiya had been practicing senjutsu in Mount Mayaboku during this time. Nangongzhe couldn't help but think maliciously that Jiraiya deserved to be oppressed. Suffering this kind of punishment was really the best punishment. During this period, Nangong-ro also asked several times. Nangongzhe went to Mount Mayaboku, and when he came back, he became so weak, which really made Nangong-ro very puzzled. But think about it, Nangongzhe had the nerve to tell Nangong-ro that he went to Mount Mayaboku. He was neither harmed by Jiraiya. He was not embarrassed by the group of powerful toads in Mount Mayaboku. Instead, he was defeated by a meal. On this day, Nangong-ro got up early in the morning to prepare breakfast for such a big family. Whether it was Nangongzhe or Mashiro, they didn't know how to cook. As for little Linger, Nangong-ro felt that she was not so incompetent that she needed a child to help her cook. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and wore a set of loose pajamas. Just like that, Nangong-ro walked barefoot to the kitchen. After all, this house was built by Woodleaf Village to compensate Nangong's family for the loss, and the design was very novel. Even the kitchen was an open style popular in Woodleaf in recent years. Sitting in the living room, she could also see the situation in the kitchen. Just when Nangong-ro was about to wash her face with the water in the kitchen, she began to prepare to cook. A sound of knife cutting echoed in Nangong-ro's ears. Clang! 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 Obviously, it was the sound of cutting vegetables. The sound of the kitchen knife and the kitchen board was endless. It was as if they were playing a cheerful concert. Looking at the hazy familiar figure in front of her, Nangong Ro quickly rubbed her eyes, trying to take a closer look at the person in front of her. Brother? Nangong Ro probed. Her disbelief was self-evident. Ah. Ruru, you're awake? Nangongja stopped what he was doing and turned around to look at his sister, who was standing behind him in a daze. Nangongja's slightly long hair was wrapped in a headscarf. Under the cover of a ray of sunlight outside the window, Nangongja no longer had the indifferent feeling of estrangement that he always had. On the contrary, it made people feel very comfortable. At this moment, Nangongja was no longer the king of hell who dominated the battlefield. Instead, he was more like the ignorant person who struggled to survive in the small town with Nangong Ro. No, no, no. I'm not awake yet. I'll go back and sleep first, then we'll talk about other things. Although Nangong Ro kept denying what she saw, the slight smile on her face betrayed Nangong Ro's mood. Alright, stop playing tricks with me. Looking at Nangong Ro's expression, Nangongja felt very amused. He stretched out his slightly wet finger and knocked Nangong Ro's head. I haven't cooked with you for a long time. Do you have to be so surprised? Come on, come on. Although I'm good at cutting vegetables, you're still the one who's cooking, right? If I cook, Little Linger will definitely throw a tantrum again. Little Linger didn't have any bad habits. Most of the time, she was very cute. But when it came to food, she had a strict requirement. As long as the situation permitted, she would never compromise as long as she could eat better food. Originally, Nangongja and Mashiro could rely on their ordinary cooking skills to barely feed Little Linger's picky stomach along the way. But ever since Little Linger arrived at Woodleaf and tasted Nangong Ro's cooking, she was no longer willing to eat Nangongja or Mashiro's cooking. Nangong Ro seemed to be enjoying it, and she took on the task of cooking. Nangong Ro stretched out her hand and wiped away the slight traces of water left by Nangongja. Brother is so childish. You only know how to act spoiled with me like this. Humph! When Nangong Ro said this, she raised her head proudly. Nangongja looked at his sister's appearance, and for a moment, he felt a little speechless. He really wanted to find a mirror and put it in front of his sister, to let her see who was the one acting spoiled now. Yes, yes, yes. It's brother acting spoiled with my Ruru, okay? Then, my Nangong Missy, would you be willing to cook with your spoiled brother? But how could Nangongja speak according to his mood? He could only closely follow Nangong Ro's words and put Nangong Ro on a pedestal. Oh. Nangong Ro pouted at this moment and looked at Nangongja, who was slapping his face in front of her. But soon, she put away this expression. Well. Although I feel like you seem to be thinking of something very rude. But since you've already begged me, then I'll reluctantly make breakfast with you. Hearing Nangong Ro's words, Nangongja's face smiled even more. Sure enough, no matter what his sister was hiding from him, the feelings of living together, as well as the trust between them, would never change. Some things, if it wasn't the right time to know, then forcing it would only hurt others and hurt oneself. Nangongja believed that when his sister thought it over, she would naturally tell him what was going on. The two of them chatted and laughed as they made breakfast together. It looked so harmonious and sweet. During this time, Mashiro and Little Linger woke up one by one and washed up. Sitting in the living room, Little Linger looked at Nangongja and Nangong Ro with envy. The relationship between brother and Nangong Nasan is really good. Little Linger seems to want to be like them. Mashiro heard Little Linger's words and agreed with her. After all, the two of them did have a good relationship. There was a faint trace of worry in her heart, but Mashiro didn't say it out loud. After all, it wasn't to the point of being out of control. This was almost the most peaceful day since Nangongja returned to Woodleaf. Whether it was fighting with 9 tails or being seriously injured and in a coma. Whether it was cultivating the internal force to attract natural energy, or being forced to follow Jiraiya to the dangerous Mount Myaboku. Indeed, Nan Gongja had to deal with one thing after another. He was completely exhausted. With such a good opportunity, he could relax. The tense nerves in his mind were slightly relaxed. It was really great. The sun outside the window seemed to take care of Nan Gongja's good mood, slowly sprinkling the wood-leaf land. Chapter 80. In this way, every day, Nan Gongja and Nan Gongro were responsible for the food of their family. Although it was just some trivial things, Nan Gongja felt that his whole heart was slowly clearing up. Over the years, Nan Gongja has almost never rested. He has been trying his best to play the role of a ninja. Every time he went out to perform a task, he didn't care about killing people. It seems that killing people has become a normal part of his life. Every person who was killed by Nan Gongja slowly turned into a wisp of evil, lingering in Nan Gongja's heart. Nan Gongja even thought that his life was almost like this, constantly killing people, constantly in order to keep Nan Gongro away from all the cruel killings. But Nan Gongja didn't think that there was anything wrong with this, because Nan Gongro was worth everything he had to protect. Such a family member must not be exposed to the blood and killing of the ninja world. Isn't that right? Boy. It seems that you have rested enough. It's time for us to talk about business. After Nan Gongja fell into a deep sleep, he discovered that his consciousness had once again entered the pure white spiritual space that belonged to him, where he first met Li Yang. I have been wondering, you clearly said that you would talk to me about something after leaving Mount Myaboku, but you didn't wake up. I didn't expect you to come back so soon. Nan Gongja looked at the burly figure standing in front of him, sitting cross-legged in front of Li Yang without caring about his image. Although he said that he was blaming Li Yang for not contacting him for so long. But the trace of helplessness in his eyes was obvious. Such a stable and peaceful life, no one is willing to give it up. Nan Gong boy, do you still remember our original agreement? Li Yang suddenly said. Original? At that time, Nan Gongja was still a young boy, but maybe he was lucky? On Lion Cry Mountain, Nan Gongja was guided by Li Yang's remnant soul when he was on the brink of death and formed a familiar contract with Li Yang. Their lives were connected to each other, and that was how Nan Gongja managed to survive. You mean? I will help you find your clan? Nan Gongja carefully thought about it and said tentatively. How many years has it been? Nan Gongja participated in the Sand War, Rock War, and Mist War. There were some missions buried in the depths of the ninja world. Nan Gongja can be said to have traveled everywhere. However, Li Yang didn't find any traces of her race. Nan Gongja and Li Yang thought that the lion race was like the countless other races in the long river of history. They had been drowned by the passage of time. But at this moment, Li Yang suddenly mentioned such a thing. After Nan Gongja left, Li Yang and Toad Sage talked for a long time. Li Yang must have found clues about his clan from the great immortal Toad, right? So that's how it is, if I didn't guess wrong. Did Toad Sage tell you the whereabouts of your clan? Nan Gongja and Li Yang's lives are connected, so there is a lot of estrangement between them. Nan Gongja voiced out his conjecture. Sure enough, Nan Gong boy, your brain works fast. Li Yang heard Nan Gongja's guess and sighed. Nan Gongja was no longer the naive but pretended to be smart kid that he had met before. It's good that he started to infer other things from one example. Didn't it prove that all the sacrifices he had made in this short period of time were worth it? Although that old Toad's dream technique has various flaws, some things are still worth looking at. My lion clan's information was indeed obtained from that old Toad. But to be honest, I really went a bit overboard back then. As a result, the three spiritual beast clans, the Toad, the Snake, and the Slug don't have a particularly friendly relationship with me and even the Lion clan. So, let's be honest. I don't really trust what the old toad told me. Although I didn't contact you these days. But I didn't fall into a deep sleep without doing anything. I've been relying on a secret technique to communicate with the spatial coordinates that the old toad gave me. As Li Yang spoke, she moved aside slightly, revealing a large array behind her. So, is it really okay for you to draw in my spiritual space like this? Nan Gongzhi seemed to want to ease the serious atmosphere, so he changed the topic slightly. As for Li Yang, after so many years, what kind of conduct Nan Gongzhi had? Was there a need to think about it? With a wave of his hand, the cloak on his body also rose up high. A black and purple energy storm formed behind Li Yang. The formation that covered the ground was instantly cleaned up. This is just a deduction, it doesn't have much of an effect. Although I can't be completely sure that this formation leads to the habitat of my lion clan, there are traces of evidence. However, there are many traces that can prove that these coordinates are related to my lion clan. Even if there's only a sliver of certainty, I still hope that I can save my clan. The mistake back then was always my fault. What does it have to do with my clan? As Li Yang spoke, she actually became a little agitated. Obviously, there were still some things that Li Yang didn't confess to Nan Gongzhi. The so-called sinner who offended the three major clans. These things could be explained in detail for half a night, couldn't they? However, Nan Gongzhi didn't mind. Everyone would always bury some things deep in their hearts, right? People who didn't hold anything back never existed. Perhaps this was the biggest reason why humans could evolve step by step and become the spirit of all things, ruling over the human world. It was a kind of self-preservation instinct. It was like the root of all evil. Nan Gongzhi clapped his hands and stood up, supporting himself on the ground. His hands weren't idle either, patting the non-existent dust off his body. He looked at Li Yang, who was squatting on the ground in frustration. He picked up his pace and walked over to Li Yang's side. Although Li Yang was much more muscular than him, Nan Gongzhi still reached out and placed his hand on Li Yang's shoulder. Li Yang, do you still remember the words you said at Mount Mayaboku? Although it was also because you wanted to intimidate the great toad immortal, I also believe that was your life's principle. Survive. Crazy demon. Since you and I have already signed a familiar contract, our lives are intertwined. Why do you need to think so much about it? Although these days have been peaceful and comfortable, I'm still a warrior. But in the end, I am a martial artist, born to fight. I've lived too many days like this. I'm not like myself anymore. It doesn't matter if it's for you or for me. I will definitely accompany you on this journey. You want to find your clansmen. I already understand. You and I are one. Aren't your clansmen also my clansmen? This journey may be somewhat difficult and dangerous. But so what? We'll go together. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.